This week in games, let's reflect back on the 2020 decade and what really made an impact. This is the Two Penny Gamescast. What's poppin', players? Welcome back to the Two Penny Gamescast, episode 233? 33. Fantastic. I am your host, Tavin Bothel, here with my good friend and co-host. Say hello to the people, Connor Elliott.
Hello, I'm the co-host, Connor Elliott.
That's all you got for me? That's all you got for me today?
I had a lot of energy earlier when I said my name and intro, but now why are you warranted?
I gave you a performance in our Bioshock review, which will be at the end of this episode, or you can just jump over to the YouTube channel and find it right now. But I gave you a performance in the Bioshock review, all right? And this is the energy you come with me on our main show.
When you walk out of a movie with amazing acting,
yeah,
hit it out of the park.
Yes. I expect an applause, yes.
You're watching a movie.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
so second of all, do I get all of a sudden amped up because Willem Dafoe was amazing in Nosferatu?
I do.
You've never seen it. You've never seen that. You don't know.
I get amped up from great performances.
Well, good for you. But this is why I didn't get amped up a second ago. For that reason
but
entirely.
I get energized at the prospect of like having a conversation about art, which is what we often do every week on this show. So I'm just always excited to be here.
Often. We do it every week. Twice. Like in the sense of two different shows where we do it.
Sometimes. Yeah, sometimes.
I mean, sometimes. When do we not?
Listen, sometimes I'm listening to you and Phil like awkwardly gab through some Sonic conversation or something. I'm like, I don't fucking care about.
I see. You're talking about your own personal investment.
Oh, of
I
course.
get it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm the reason to be here, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm. Make all the videos.
Y'all are just stepping stones for me to go get an actual.
Now you do. I was like, yeah, that's true. And then you kind of fell off.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is, of course, the Two Penny Gamescast. Normally, each week, me and Connor come to you with the nerdy news you need to know concerning the video game. You got it?
Yeah.
Okay. Concerning the video game industry. We each come to you with two topics, 2 pennies. If you didn't get it, fucking fix it. Do whatever you got to do.
What?
Scratch your face or whatever you got to do.
Did.
You're such an awkward human being. You know?
What do you mean? What I do?
Awkward human being. Where was I? Listen, we normally talk about the news. We're in the first week of the year. There's no news this week, so you know we're gonna have a different type of conversation this week. Connor, this is of course Two Penny Gamescast, which you can catch every week, Tuesday, 8 a.m. Central Time, youtube.com/@2pennygames, and mainstream podcast services of your choice. Follow us on social medias down in the links in the description below. Thank you so much for all of that. Make sure you like, subscribe, and drop a comment down below about any of the topics today that we discuss and how you feel about them, and put your own 2 cents in, because I certainly want to hear it. You know what, Connor? What I should have done is prepped the comments page that I set up on some of the conversations that we were having over the last couple of weeks, and so I'll have that and I'll prep that for later in the show. So we are going to implement a comment section where you, the audience, can put in your own 2 cents this week. We're kind of freestyling a little bit this week because there's just not a lot of news. Hey, you know the big headlines this week? Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to make a bunch of money.
If you didn't know,
Marvel Rivals has the Fantastic Four coming, and they use bots.
You say, but I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about.
Do you want to know? It'll ruin every time you play Quick Play.
No, they're not bots. You're thinking it.
Live in your ignorance. Because we were playing last night. We played a bot round, and I was like, "This is a bot round." Anyways, Connor. There's no news this week, so instead we decided that we would have more discussion-based topics. And so what was sort of the general topic of the show that we wanted to jump into this week?
Well, it's 2025 now.
It is.
Half of a 10-year period.
Indeed.
Which they call a decade.
Uh-huh.
And so we thought, well, what has happened so far? A lot of things. A lot of games, a lot of developments in the industry, usually not so good ones.
Right.
And that's only 5 years into a whole decade, and, of course, we have beyond. But for simple purposes, what's going to happen for the rest of the decade? I don't know.
I don't know either.
So we can talk about it.
We can.
Find out what is going on.
So you and I have been alive for, this would be the, wait, let me count it. This would be the 4th decade that we've been alive for. You aware of that? Crazy. You know, neither of us are 30 years old, but we've been around for 4 decades.
1, well, 2,
90s,
4,
2000s, 10s, and 20s.
Yeah.
You know?
We were born at the end of the 90s.
We were born at the end of the 90s, so that, you know, it doesn't
It's
really count.
technicality.
But, you know, we've done a lot of research. We've done a lot of homework because
Not that
we have
much.
this little show called the Two Penny Gameclub, which is like a monthly video game book club that we do where we play a game in the background, come to you at the beginning of each month, and review that game for
Yes.
you. In fact, at the end of this episode, the most recent episode of the Game Club will be attached to this episode of the podcast. So make sure you stick around and listen to that for our review of Bioshock. We're going to review it and rank it amongst the other games that we played in the franchise, which is very, very exciting to do. But, Connor, we've done some research. We've played some games from the 90s. Both of us have. You know, we've played some games from the 2000s, right? The 2010s we were both intimately familiar with, probably the most familiar with. And then now, you know, we're halfway through the 2020s decade. So we thought we would talk about it, see what we've come across so far. Where would we like to start this conversation with? Because this is a podcast that's a little more industry focused, a little more culturally focused than just talking about video games and how much we love video games. We want to go a little bit more in depth. So to me, there's a couple of different things that we can talk about. We can talk about games, we can talk about industry, we can talk about culture.
And fourth, future.
Future
From what we know of right now.
What we know and what we would like to see, and then what we would kind of sort of expect to see through the cynicism that this industry just keeps handing us again and again.
That's probably going to frame the future discussion of what the industry is going to look like more than anything else. But
Indeed.
yeah. So we talk about games?
Let's talk about games.
Yeah.
I like games. Let's talk about games.
Get the blood flowing.
Right.
The tongue's talking.
So games 2020 all the way to the end of 2024.
And beginning of 2025.
Beginning of 20, yeah, sure.
Something's had to
we're
have
not going to count that. You know, some people don't say the decade starts until the first year, like the one.
Huh?
That's not how that works.
Yeah, it's not.
You start at the 0.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you go all the way to the 9, 0 to 9. You know, that's how that works. Anyway. So yeah, we are 5 years deep into games. We've had a lot. There's been a lot of output, you know. Some great, some terrible. How do we want to handle this? Do we want to talk about things that sort of caused the biggest splashes so far?
Yeah, definitely.
Or do we want to handle it a little more chronologically?
No, definitely the biggest splashes.
Okay.
I think that matters the most.
Okay.
So, starting from 2020, you know what? Maybe we should go chronologically. I was going to say 2020 from
I
like
think
a
we can
game.
handle sort of the biggest things of each year.
Yeah.
And kind of talk about it from there. So if we start from 2020, I think there's a big 3 of 2020, right?
Yeah.
Funny how, you know, big 3 has been a conversation
Shut
a lot
up.
lately. Anyways, the big 3 to me are The Last of Us Part 2, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and Last of Us Part 2 came out 2020.
No, I know.
Yeah. Final Fantasy VII, I'm sorry, I said Rebirth. Remake.
Remake came out in 2019.
Nope, 2020.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We were in that pandemic, baby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then Cyberpunk?
Oh, you were talking about... Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. Cyberpunk, I couldn't include it in that one. Let me see what other games...
You're assuming a positive splash, you know? To me,
That's true. Yeah.
the Cyberpunk's the biggest splash out of there. If you want to talk positive and games that were great, I'd probably go Ghost of Tsushima next.
Yeah. Just from how people talk about it, you know...
Now, what is our objective in
Well-
talking about this? Like,
that can be multifaceted.
Yeah.
'Cause now that I'm thinking about it, Cyberpunk would be included in that solely because of its conversation, but also because of its comeback. Which, in this day and age of gaming, it's been the case for a while that you can release a game, have it be a bit subpar, but develop it a little bit further past the release date. But Cyberpunk is probably one of the most successful examples of that due to how far, you know,
Fortnite?
how much... But Fortnite, by the time it released itself, wasn't it kind of, We're talking about 2020s. We're talking about 2020.
Fortnite wasn't Fortnite, when
All
it, you know, but
Fortnite and Cyberpunk.
For 2020, for the 2020 decade,
Yeah.
you are correct. Yeah.
Yes.
Cyberpunk probably had the biggest comeback.
Yeah, we'll leave out things talking about...
When did Fallout 76 come out? Pre-pandemic. 2019, I want to say. Cyberpunk had a better comeback than Fallout 76.
By a large margin.
I don't know about large, but it did.
Remember, there was First of all, there was Cyberpunk Edge Runners, which saw a massive increase in their base. This was before the Liberty City DLC. And then they had another big one with Liberty City being released.
And the
whole 2.0?
they called it a 2.0,
They didn't call it that.
So, to my understandings, by the time Edge Runners came out, let's just tackle Cyberpunk then. By the time Edge Runners came out, the most consistent, or the biggest thing about Cyberpunk 2077 was that I think they had kind of gotten the stability down. The game ran more consistently than at launch. We both talked about it at launch, reviewed it at launch. That's an early episode of the Gamescast if you want to run back and find that. But it was a broken game, and it sucks because it was the most anticipated game. It probably still remains the most anticipated game. No, Elden Ring. Elden Ring was definitely more anticipated than that. Dude, imagine if Elden Ring was bad. We'll get to that. But Cyberpunk, was one of the most anticipated games I've ever seen in my life. Just completely fumbled that ball. The game would crash all the time. I remember textures wouldn't load. They would just be fuzzy and blurry all the time. AI was broken almost all the time. There was a lot of times where you'd be in a cutscene. I put quotations around cutscene because it's one of those games that you never leave perspective. So you're always you are in a active cutscene. It's not like a cinematic play. I guess you can't even call it a cutscene, but you're in a piece of dialogue or whatever, and a character would just kind of stop and stare at you because it was loading the next line, or a character would get up and walk away, and then Johnny Silverhand was supposed to come into frame, and he would never come into frame, so you'd get stuck in that moment. Oh man, what a mess that game was.
My particular moment was. It was nothing special. It was a specific point in the game, in the map. Like I said, nothing particular about it. It was a street corner. And every time I went by that street corner, my game crashed.
Really?
I have no clue what it was.
That's a very specific one.
Super specific. I couldn't find anything else online. It was that same spot over and over and over again.
Yeah.
The one I had to go by it.
The one that broke me is after the big heist, there's a moment where you're sort of on the run from the authorities or whatever. And there's another character who's also on the run.
Yeah.
And you meet them at a diner. And you have a quick conversation about them, about what the next steps are, or whatever, and he gets up and goes away. And then, like I was just saying, Johnny Silverhand is supposed to appear out of nowhere and come and talk and sit down in the booth and talk to you. He never came.
A lot of people had that problem.
Or he did come eventually, but it took 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I was just watching people at the diner. I was people watching. I was just watching people at the diner sip coffee and eat sandwich or whatever. And then he finally came, sat down, didn't say anything, and then the game crashed. And I went,
really?
And I went, all right, I'm done. No more. That was a mess. That was very, very disappointing. And on top of that, I kind of feel like Cyberpunk would have disappointed no matter what, because it is a good game now. It's even a great game now. But I don't think it ever was going to meet those expectations.
Not the expectations, no. But I feel like people still would have seen the quality that was there.
I think it just would have been. I think everybody was expecting 10s.
Yeah,
and
I was.
It's maybe a high 8, low 9. In final form. And I think because it's
strongly in the 8 category, I think. Somewhere there.
It's a very strong 8 though. It's a very high mark 8. So I wouldn't blame someone if they gave it a 9. But I think because it wasn't a perfect 10, it probably would have just gotten 8s across the board, but that would have been deemed a disappointment.
Yeah.
Culturally, And so though I don't think they needed to fall so far, I think allowing them to fall far and bounce back actually made their bounce back greater.
It did, yes.
I don't think people would have cared, about Phantom Liberty as much, if not for them falling so far down.
It would have brought back the people that enjoyed it the first time around, rather than those that didn't play it because of its state, and hearing that it was all fixed now, and even better than before, jumped on it. That helps get it up into a higher echelon than it otherwise would have been at.
Yeah, so I jumped on for Phantom Liberty, but I wanted to play the main game first, and I didn't get very far in that because other things came out and I got distracted, right? But I jumped back on for Phantom Liberty because everybody was saying, "Oh my god, it's great, it's that and the third." Well, I mean, all the upgrades and the 2.0 is great. I think Phantom Liberty is deemed like a good expansion.
Yeah,
right?
They fixed melee, for example. It's a fun way to play the game.
Right? Yeah, they improved melee greatly and other ways and other things. But I think. If I walked away from that game and went, it was a really good game, I really enjoyed it, I don't think I would ever come back for Phantom Liberty.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
No, yeah, I get that.
And because I was so burned, it allowed me to be like, all right, let me spin the wheels again and see what happens. And now I think it's a genuinely really good game. I think its opening moments need a little bit more structure, a little bit more introduction to, hey, this is our world, this is how it works, this is how quest systems work, and all that. It doesn't really have that, but anyways, that's up beside the point. I'm getting a little too reviewy of Cyberpunk, but yeah, wow, what a fumble. And the way CD Projekt Red, at least the leaders of CD Projekt Red, handled that fumble was also, wow, you guys really have fucked up here. Like, that was really bad. And it's because of that, we can't forget that. You know, as great as that Witcher, is it called The Witcher 4?
4, yeah.
Yeah. As great as that Witcher 4 trailer is, we have to remember this moment. You know, like, we can't let them get away just because they came back and made the game good again, because Witcher 4 can be bad as well.
I think the people that remember that more is them, because it hurt their bottom line. It was not beneficial for them at all. It showed. I mean,
it was still profitable. They still made a lot of money.
They did, but that was like a moment in time. If it happened again, you're not going to make money. If people hear out the gate, oh, this isn't so great, because they haven't released a game since then.
Especially if they never had the comeback.
Yes.
If they said, you know what, we fucked up, we're gonna work on stability and get the game working, and then we're gonna move on, I don't know if people would be excited about a Witcher 4.
Yeah.
You know? It's because they went above and beyond. They did a 2.0. They did a really good expansion that they went, okay, we're good. Like, all right, I'm back on the CD Projekt Red train, but I'm a cautious passenger now.
Yeah, you don't know if it's failing yet. It's still picking up speed.
I think they can come back.
I think so too.
Yeah.
It's entirely if they decide to cut corners once again. I just don't think they're going to do that.
Well, I also maybe the first Witcher game, but I don't believe they've released anything lesser than a 7. Witcher 2, I'd probably give like a high 7.
I think you would have to give Cyberpunk below that at launch.
At launch, for sure. At launch, that's for sure. But they've got and
in the context of
looking
now.
back on it,
right?
And it's a weird thing because at some point we're gonna get to Cyberpunk for the Game Club. How do we judge that game? Because what we play is not what we had at launch.
Well, in the same way we just judged Bioshock, we just based it off how we felt playing it, you know. And now that version of Cyberpunk, the failure, is gone. It'll never come back. In the same way, we can never review Concord because it's gone. You know, the state of how things are at this moment is really what matters if we're ranking things. Or
you know how badly I want Concord to be in that fucking Game Club list? It wouldn't be high. It would not be high. No. It'd probably be, somewhere in the Uncharted range or whatever. But like, I would really like to put. I liked that game, man. I'm gonna remember that game for a long time.
You will, yeah.
I liked it. It was fun.
Most notably for me was the mechanic of when you switch players, you gain abilities.
Yes!
That was the best part of it.
So creative.
It was, yeah.
So creative.
But nothing else was.
No. No, nothing else was. Some of the ability kits.
Yeah.
The character kits were great. The character design's awful. But the kits were great.
Yeah, like Star Child looked bad. I loved his rush mechanic. It was super fun. Just rush around.
Who was the crossbow lady that I like? Haymar?
Yeah, I think
Haymar. Something like that. The Asian lady with the crossbow who could float. Loved her kit. Oh, I thought she was badass.
But people spoke, and they did bad on marketing and outward design. Yeah, that's how it goes.
It was a fumble. Moving on, or keeping within that first year.
Yeah.
Where do you want to go next? You want to go Final Fantasy? You want to go Last of Us? Maybe a little bit of Ghost of Tsushima?
Let's go with Final Fantasy. Because
Final Fantasy.
The biggest point of that one is it had the hype of Final Fantasy VII behind it.
Yes.
Plus the remake-ification of games. Yep. Everyone always loves that. And of course, the thing that really cements itself as being unique, other than its amazing combat system and the fact it's based off of a pre-existing titan of a game, is the fact that they define remakes differently. Kind of,
yes,
in a bad way, in the sense of they made it seem like it was a 1-to-1 ratio, and then it was not that at all.
Well, what I think the genius is, and of course, all of these words could bite me in the ass when the third part comes out. But I think this remake trilogy truly plays both parts very well. Where it is, if you're a first timer, this is Final Fantasy VII, blown up and extended, and in some ways bloated, but blown up and essentially the best form of Final Fantasy VII you could ever get.
Yeah.
assuming part 3 works off the same formula that the first 2 parts did, which I don't believe it will, but we're going to have to wait and find out. And if you're a fan, it puts the stakes back into it. This is not a boring remake anymore.
Yeah.
You know, you play, when I play the Delta Snake Eater remake later this year, right? It's not going to be like exciting for me because I know the story beats. This looks to be a very traditional remake. I'm going to get used to the new gameplay and new gameplay, the new controls and all the things and all the little quality of life improvements. And then once I get used to those improvements, it's just Snake Eater again, right? Like it's not like that interesting to me. So like what Remake does and how it's able to kind of straddle both lines and make it exciting for both groups of players is incredible. It's ambitious, it's groundbreaking, and we'll never see it happen ever again. It'll never happen again. But if it was going to happen to a title, it could only happen to Final Fantasy VII. I can't think of another title in which, I mean, maybe Chrono Trigger, but like, you wouldn't want that, right? Like, you would want the narrative of Chrono Trigger to remain very traditional. Maybe put a little more meat on the bone, but you wouldn't want to do what they're doing with Final Fantasy VII.
You know what? You actually brought up an example where, due to the time travel mechanic, they could make that work.
They could, but would you want that?
Not necessarily, no.
Because I still attest, I don't think Chrono Trigger is a super well-written game. I think it's just a really cool concept and has strong introductions to characters, but then it's also one of those RPGs that, like, you get the strong introduction, maybe the loyalty mission, and then nothing else from them. So, like, if they were to kind of give, I think, to me, one of the best parts about Rebirth was the moment in the hut after Cloud has his Mako freak out, and him and Tifa in the hut, and they're talking, and they get a little romancy, and it looks like they're about to kiss, and then you hear them listening on the other side. Like, those moments would be great in a Chrono Trigger. But I wouldn't want bad guy, spoilers, bad guy is time traveling and doing all this weird stuff, and things could potentially be different and all this stuff. That's where it gets weird. But I do want to talk about Final Fantasy VII Remake. Correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like the Remake trilogy is putting Final Fantasy back on the map. I feel like we had a couple of iterations of Final Fantasy in that 7th and even in the 8th console generation where Final Fantasy really lost a lot of relevance and really was not the powerhouse that it was. And I don't think 16... I think 16 surely was better than, say, like a 15 or 14 at launch or even a 13. But I don't think 16 did enough to really make people fans of Final Fantasy. And I think 7 Remake has. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Certainly did with you. It just... What Final Fantasy VII is at its core, going off the original game, just can already hook a lot of people into it. And with the modern revamp, not having the bad graphics, having voice acting that's extremely good, it's able to capture your attention as a Final Fantasy fan, or as a Final Fantasy newcomer, while also appeasing fans. And so, both of these games, 16 and Rebirth, they kind of, Square Enix was dour on exactly how well it did. It didn't reach their expectations. So, as far as what it would do for the Final Fantasy name, I hope it, beyond the 7 remakes, does something to it, but I'm not as hopeful, I'm not as confident that it will. My core focus of the game is how it entirely flipped someone's perspective of what they were expecting going in for a remake. That's definitely the definitive thing that it did do and will always do. Contentiously, depending on who you ask, but, I think that's...
It feels like more people are excited about this than not.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But you still have some people who were fans of the old one. They're like, I don't really want to do this whole revamping stuff. Yeah. I just wanted the original. That, to me, as it was. Well,
as of right now, we still have that.
We do, yeah.
Right. Except Rebirth, I think, divided the fan base even more.
Yeah.
Than Remake did. And rightfully so,
It's kind of supposed to.
Do we want to talk about Ghost, or should we just move on?
Go to Last of Us, just because Ghost has a lot of social relevance, but in terms of, like...
Ghost is a great game. We love Ghost of Tsushima.
Yeah,
We're very excited for the next one, but I don't think Ghost moved the needle so much. So, yeah, let's talk about Last of Us. I'm looking at the games for 2021. I don't think we'll spend a lot of time there. And in 2022, there's 2 games, and then we'll move on. So let's finish up 2020 with The Last of Us.
Yes,
part 2. Very divisive game.
Our review is a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
It's one of your favorite games of all time. I think it's a downgrade from the first one. And there's a lot of people who hate it. Like, through and through.
I don't think the hate is deserved. You can not like it so much, that's fine. I think the hate is undeserved. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the plot leaked. And all the cuts, or most of the cutscenes leaked and so forth. Like, I really truly feel if that never happened and people just played the game and experienced it in its raw form, yes, it still would be a level of divisiveness. People would still have feelings and emotions about it, but I don't think it would be this. I don't think it would have been the moment it was.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about that is I feel like leaks and their impact are something that's kind of minimized with time. People kind of forget the time of the moment when we were being leaked.
The context matters.
Yeah. But even with that time passed, I feel like people haven't looked back and said, we were wrong about it, as they would with something like Metal Gear Solid 2, which seemingly, I don't know when the turnaround for that game was. I'd be interested in seeing when.
It was a long time.
It seemed like it was a little bit of ways away.
It was a long time.
But
we've not passed that point yet.
I figured we hadn't, but it doesn't even seem like that'll go in the direction for something like Last of Us. Especially because Metal Gear Solid 2 did have the real-world parallels, as opposed to just being in itself... like
you could make the argument. Last of Us, both 1 and 2 are generic stories, right? Like we've seen these stories before, right? MGS2 is a little more bold than that, and for 15 years, people didn't know what the hell he was talking about. He was talking a bunch of gibberish. What the fuck do you mean?
Not gibberish.
You know, it wasn't until really that 2016, from an American perspective, that 2016 election where we were able to look back and go, oh fuck. He called it, like 100%. He called it. Whereas like Last of Us,
that was blown up to a point where it's more seeable,
right. And then and then like 2020 happened, and the pandemic and all these things, and it just made Metal Gear Solid 2 age like a fine wine.
Yeah.
Last of Us Part 2, I do think will age well. I think people. I still believe that I don't fully agree with you that I don't think people haven't turned around on that one yet. Maybe just the haters have gotten quiet. But I truly believe that like the love for that game is starting to beat the hate for that game. But I think overall it's just that like it's not going to be able to climb like MGS2 climbed, because what is Last of Us Part 2 gonna? What about like everybody understands that game? There's not the element of what the fuck are you talking about? I do think season 2 of the show is going to, or maybe not season 2, but the next couple of seasons of the show are going to draw people back to the game and people revisit it. And I do fully believe when you replay it, you're going to walk away and be higher than you were. I don't think you'll love it like me, but I do believe you'll be higher than you were.
Very possible, yeah.
I think, and that's always been my perspective is, yes, for video games, but with anything, re-experiencing any type of art is just as, if not more important than your first time through.
Yeah,
for me, right? And so I think Last of Us Part 2, I think is a bold game. I think it's one of those games that will empower developers, rather than energize an audience. And the first game did both. The first game empowered developers and energized an audience. The second game, I think, in the grand scheme of things, will more empower developers than not.
See, that's the other aspect of The Last of Us Part 2. Beyond people's issues with it on the game itself and its own merits, it's also, the thing I've seen a lot is what it represents. It represents a lot of what's wrong with the industry today. Hyper-realistic, long time to develop, a lot of focus on things that really don't matter. They're cool, but they don't matter to the sense that you should be prioritizing that, or really even making that a factor of your game-making process.
Do I need to be shown when Ellie picks up a rag how her different fingers manipulate the cloth?
Yeah.
Like, do I need to see that? Does that matter? I don't think it does.
If it comes at the cost of way more time to make a game, way more manpower, no. And a lot of people seem to think that, because
Naughty Dog hasn't learned that lesson.
They've not, no.
You can see it in the Intergalactic trailer when it was revealed before we knew it was Naughty Dog. She picked up like a blanket or something, and I went, Naughty Dog.
Which that could be, more shown in cutscenes and go to a more traditional, it's out of the realm of realism with the gameplay. Especially with the kind of game they're making, sci-fi, futuristic hack and slash where you're jumping on rocks.
We're getting a Naughty Dog game with this one.
Yeah. For certain elements. Gameplay, I think, but especially because they've touted this is going to be, our most gameplay systems heavy game we've made yet.
Yeah.
So that has the most potential to reach beyond what is a Naughty Dog game. But
it excites me for sure.
Yeah,
as someone who's like, my opinion of Naughty Dog has changed and grown a lot, especially during that Uncharted era. Uncharted is actually less impressive to me now than it was because my perspective on what gameplay is has changed.
Yeah.
I still think both Last of Us games and even Uncharted 4 to a bit, but to a much lesser degree. But I still think those two Last of Us games are the best playing Naughty Dog games ever made.
Yeah, they're nice to play.
Yeah,
you know, my only issue comes with longevity in terms of the games themselves. Sure. Last of Us being a bit shorter, 2 being longer.
Two. I agree with you. 2's too long.
Mm-hmm.
On replay, it didn't feel so bad. The first time through, it's egregious. You're like, fucking shit, dude. But the second time through, it wasn't so bad. But I still feel like we could find ways to cut this down to make it not so long. You know, did there need to be so many combat encounters? Did Ellie need to fall out of a window, get washed away by a river, and end up in a neighborhood? Like, did these moments need to happen?
Yes,
clearly, right?
Maybe they did.
But I do think the boldness of putting the player in a pair of shoes that they don't want to be in. I mean, you could argue Metal Gear Solid 2 did that, but
different, very different.
Naughty Dog took it a step further.
Yeah,
you know, of MGS2 puts you in a pair of shoes of like, you're not the character you want to be playing as, and that's all it really did.
He's kind of a whiner.
He's kind of a whiner, you know. Like
no one likes being made to play a whiner, especially when you're coming down from Snake himself.
Right, but like, does anybody hate Raiden? I mean, back in the day, maybe, but like, only hated because he was a whiner, right?
People started liking him when he became a cyborg ninja more so, but
so ridiculous.
But cool.
It is cool. But you know, like people's perspective softened on Raiden.
Yeah.
You hated Abby.
Mm-hmm.
You despised Abby. Like, you really did hate her. So, it just takes it a step further. You're a little more bold with that choice, and I'm curious to see if developers will ever do that again. I'm not saying it'll happen all the time, and I definitely don't want it to happen in like God of War or something, right? I definitely don't want that to happen, but like.
Definitely doesn't seem to be going to that direction anyway.
No, I don't think. I think that would like totally do it. But like, just something else, right? Like, can developers do it again? You know?
Yeah.
The experiment. I say experiment, but the
decision
effect of the first Last of Us game was felt immediately. Like, tone changed in how we present stories in video games, and it was immediately reflective with games like God of War 2018 and so on and so forth, you know? And we haven't gotten there yet, but again, I think that's due to the long development times of stories and of these games and so forth. So yeah, I think the effects of part 2 are still yet to be seen, but I'm wondering if it'll be as impactful as the first one from a developer point of view. We'll see. Connor, let's move on to 2021. I'll name you off the games that show up on a Google search. Halo Infinite, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, Deathloop, Resident Evil Village, It Takes Two, Returnal. I'm not seeing anything here that's worth stopping and talking about.
No. Good games.
Good games. Great games.
Not definitive decade-defining games.
Yeah. 2021
the decade-defining game.
Yeah, 21 was definitely a fine year. It was a good year. Like, it was fine. 22, I'm more critical of, outside of the big two. Which one should we start with?
I'm looking games up again because, as I am very well known to not know of when games specifically come out,
Elden Ring and Ragnarok, are the two here. I don't know if Ragnarok is really so impactful that we need to stop and talk about it. It was God of War 2018 again, maybe a little bit better, maybe a little bit bigger.
Just high quality, very
super high quality game, phenomenal game. You should all play it. One of my favorites of all time. But we should talk about Elden Ring.
I'm debating. Yeah, those are the 2 games. Okay.
Yeah, there's nothing else.
No, yeah.
So we should talk about Elden Ring. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Talk about a studio that came from, a very niche perspective. I'm talking all the way back to like the Armored Core days and early stuff. And found a formula that they really resonated with and said, no, people will like this. And then just kept refining on that formula. And eventually people liked it, and it blew up to a point to where it's the biggest juggernaut of influence I think I've ever seen in my lifetime.
Yeah.
Just moving, like, all action games were on face buttons. Attack was always square, right? Moving that getting people to off of the face buttons and onto bumpers and triggers, I think was so crazy. Like that's a really basic thing that you go, oh yeah, well of course, but like it wasn't like that.
No.
Like I played a lot of action games where it was always square to hit things, and moving it to a bumper and trigger and keeping control of the camera in the player's hands like that is really impressive that they were able to do that. And on top of that, they are unapologetic with what they believe their design ethics are, and the people rewarded them for that in ways that I never saw Elden Ring being that big.
No.
Like insane level of hype, insane level of impact.
I never expected it to be like I love FromSoft games.
Right.
I was super invested all the way through, and then it became one of the biggest games of all time.
Right.
And
We all knew this was going to be the biggest FromSoft game.
Yeah.
That was no secret. We knew that. We knew the gaming industry was going to love it. It was going to get all the awards and all this stuff. But we didn't know that like Akai Sinat was going to have one of the biggest streams of the year years later because he went back and played it for the first time on stream.
Yeah.
Someone who's completely disconnected from that culture.
Well, when I first started playing FromSoft games, when I was a big fan of it, there was what was the fucking show called? There was 3 guys that were from IGN, and they actually split off from IGN because their show did so well, where they had 2 of them that were sitting off to the sideline, while one of them played Dark Souls first time from the ground up. And I remember loving those videos because it's fun to watch people get into this from the very beginning. That person in particular would go on to actually be good at the Souls games, where he originally was bad, and kind of mirroring Kai Cenat. People like the idea of watching somebody play a game, not only that's made to be hard, but that can, kind of put some people off, depending on the gamer you're talking about. And sticking through and watching them fail and succeed, and those highs and low moments really, it's fun in and of itself without having to play the game. Which, if you saw someone like a streamer play it, after that, you might have said, well, I want to go play it. Yeah. It's a game that infects people. Even you, who don't like FromSoft games all that much, you're not the biggest fan of it, you felt compelled to play it constantly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, even when, like, my perspective on Elden Ring is definitely lesser than the majority, right? Like, but I still think it's a great game. I think if you have never tried it, you should try it. I think it's probably the best game to start with for most players. Guys like you and I, of course.
Yeah.
Go back, go play Demon Souls, go play Dark Souls, all that shit. But, like, if someone goes, hey man, I hear a lot about this game, should I try it out? Yeah, man, try it out.
Yeah.
See if it scratches an itch for you, but just know what you're getting into, right? This is a hard game. And way to trust the player. Way to trust the player in a way that they hadn't done before.
Which is why they always get liked, because they respect the player.
They've always respected the player. They've always trusted the player. To put the player in an open world. And from a design perspective, yeah, there's a right way to go. There's like they actively tried to like make it be like, oh, you can really take whatever direction you want. You'll find something. You'll go somewhere. Most players probably ended up on the same path, especially because they did the whole golden path thing with the shrines and so forth.
Literally.
But they didn't punish players for jumping off of that path, and that was new for them too.
It rewarded them, honestly. Yeah. In fact, if you didn't do that, you would get your ass kicked in.
Right. And all their other games were, I mean, sure, there was some exploring of the levels and great level design in that, but they were linear games.
Yeah.
It'd
be like how any survival horror, where you go into a new area, you go to all of the extra places that you don't think are the main way to the main objective, which you don't get told exactly what that is, but you can kind of infer, especially the more you kind of play of that kind of game, and then you go forward.
That's how they were pre-Elden Ring?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm following that example. And then Elden Ring to just take more shackles off.
Yeah.
And then be immediately rewarded for that. That is really incredible. And on top of that, the game's really fucking good. It's really damn good. Now, I personally, my biggest gripe does come on to like combat and game feel. I still don't feel like those games feel the best to play. But like still better than most. Don't get me wrong. And like, I mean, just the scope and scale and quality and like the animations and the art design and the spectacle of the game. And then like, when you fight a boss and learning it has rules, and for the most part, it follows those rules really, really well. I just wish I could play it a little differently than it makes me play, But it's a beautiful game, and it's going to go down in time. It's not like My perspective on Breath of the Wild has always been is that's an incredibly overrated game. I don't think Elden Ring's overrated by any means. I think Elden Ring did exactly what they wanted to, and I think the praise is well deserved.
Yeah. And that's the reason why I think it's going to be, if not the most definitive game of this decade, it's going to be in someone's top 10 or like an official top 10 list.
Oh, yeah.
It'll stand time.
It deserves that. I mean, if we want to talk about the best or most impactful games of the 2020s, we're going to get to it later, but I only think there's one other contender of number one right now.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
One I was going to argue for, we can bring it up, but...
Yeah. Well, let's kind of get into the big one right here, because let's go ahead and move into 23, right? I think 23 was a good year. I got to look back and remember exactly everything that came out.
It was an amazing year because
it was a dynamite year. But does everything need to be talked about? Let's find out. Let me look at my.
Tears of the Kingdom, which was going to be my point talking about.
Yeah,
that.
I don't know if Tears of the Kingdom needs to be talked about. It was Breath of the Wild again, a little bit better.
Yeah,
again,
which is the key reason why it wouldn't be in that conversation. In the same way as amazing as Rebirth is, developing on the combat systems, it's still also just. I don't think it would have the staying power of something like Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the one for 2023. We could talk about Resident Evil 4 or Spider-Man 2 or Alan Wake 2 or, Street Fighter 6.
Yeah.
A lot of really great games that really made a splash. But there's one true king of when you talk 23, and it's Baldur's Gate 3. And I think that's the only other one this decade so far that stands toe-to-toe with Elden Ring of like, this is what people are going to be talking about and taking notes from for the rest of the decade.
Correct me if I'm wrong, when we did our top 10 list, everybody here was like BG3 number one. Maybe someone did not.
I think Phil had it at 2.
Yeah.
I think Phil had it at 2. I don't remember what he had at 1, but Phil had it at 2. Mm-hmm. You and I both had it at 1. Yeah. Whoa. Talk about, like, now this is a studio that, like, nobody was talking about, Which
is funny because it was out for years at that point.
Oh, yeah.
In early access.
Yeah. And you knew.
I knew. And I knew it was going to be high quality. I didn't expect people to jump on it as much as they did when it did come out.
That's one that was like, that's spontaneous. That's something you can't replicate. That is a once in a lifetime. I don't believe Larian's next game is going to do what that game did.
It's not.
Like, it's impossible to follow that up.
Mm-hmm.
And for great reasons. Like, that game really, really, really just showed the depth that video games can go to and the amount of player agency they can put in the player's hands to help them craft a narrative, to help them engage with mechanics and to really allow the player to really express creativity in a way that, like, I don't think any other game or studio has done this decade. Like, I really don't think anybody's kind of touched that on a mechanics level.
In terms of mechanics, yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of, like, player's choice, were you also including that? Because
yeah, that one falls a little funky, right? Because like, yes, there's more than we've ever seen, but BioWare existed. Like, Prime BioWare existed.
They paved the stones.
Yeah,
that's for certain.
For certain, right? And so it's a little bit unfair to kind of crown them in that way, because there are studios who came before who did so much of the foundation building, right?
In terms of player choice, to stick on that topic, there is another game that's done it on around the same level of BG3. Know what that game is, Tavin? It's Warhammer Rogue Trader.
This motherfucker.
You go in that game, it'll present you with a situation, right? There'll be like 4 or 5 dialogue options that lead to different results. And they aren't simply just, I'm saying this sentence. It's sometimes paragraph of like what exactly your character is going to say in this moment and the effect that it's going to have after that. And that's like moment to moment to moment to moment. It just always has those kinds of moments happening. It comes the closest to it, but in terms of this, because it does take a more like, we're going to have a lot of reading that you're going to do. It's not going to be in a more traditional, you're seeing your character in a fully third-person model, interacting with other third-person models. You're in the world as much as you could possibly be. Baldur's Gate 3 does that, while allowing you to have, tons of fun characters that, even if you don't personally care about them that much, they're fun. They make it a likable party.
Yeah.
And everyone, when they were talking about the game, was like, I like Karlach the most. Everyone was mostly saying they like Shadow Art the most, of course. But then you also had some people going absolutely insane over Asterion. You had characters to latch onto, in-depth RPG mechanics to engage
Crazy
with.
to say this is not my favorite cast of characters like in the
That's
world.
fine. Yeah.
Because like
I think it's super
good. They're good.
Yeah.
But I don't think they hit the level of like a Mass Effect cast. I don't think they hit the level.
Mass Effect 3, yes. I'm not the biggest fan of the 3 cast.
The 3 cast is mostly just the same cast.
It's because it's downgraded, and then they do it with Evie and James, who I don't like. James fun.
Yeah, but Javik though.
Javik is cool as well. Yeah.
Javik's awesome. I don't know. Maybe on a replay I'll feel differently, or further exploring it on my own I'll feel.
But you are right about Mass Effect's party system.
Yeah.
In terms of Mass Effect.
But also like
BioWare, yeah, Mass Effect.
keeping to BG3 here. Like the different outcomes that you can have with each and every character, and the fact that like they're bold enough to now allow co-op in that, multiple players in that, and making choices each individually. The game kind of treats all the human characters as one character, which makes things a little messy, but fascinating, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like absolutely.
At the end of the day, that's when you do those kinds of things to engage with your friends and your party with that, not the narrative that Baldur's Gate 3 generally gives players.
And to be a game mechanically and just genre-wise that's not mainstream. That's not that you would ask me a couple of years ago, would this type of game blow up and be the biggest game of the year? No, absolutely not. It may get a cool fandom, a great pop, the industry may love it, but it's not going to do what that did.
And on top of that, what's impressive is that Baldur's Gate 3, while you're right, it's not a combat system that's accessible to most people, it's one that if people decided to sit down and play it like they did with BG3, you're going to have a lot more players that you reach than something like Elden Ring, which, due to the fact that it requires a lot of hand-eye coordination, being able to notice when you should do certain things and when not to, as opposed to a tactical game where, it's not marketable because you're not doing all of those crazy things, but anybody can easily execute them and get in the mindset of knowing what they need to do without having some other exterior force pressure them to do it very fast or very precise.
Yeah.
And to still, despite that, use the kind of game that doesn't get that same fanfare and achieve it is impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, if you had asked me the era of a turn-based RPG being the most relevant game of the year, that era was long over. Like, it has not been a thing that has happened in a long, long time. So for them to do it, for them to double down on it, for them to be a little unforgiving in their combat as well, it's a hard game. It's a punishing game. And for it to work, love it. It's amazing. It's incredible. It transcended games. Fucking nuts, right? And for it to be that title is nuts. So yeah, a very, very impressive game. That's one that I think will really sort of change people's perspectives for the rest of the decade on what we can do.
Yeah, RPGs I think are going to, like in the later half, are going to see that model followed.
Yeah, 100%. 2024.
Only one game, I think, and that's more what I would say wait and see in terms of its, relevance of this decade, and that's Astro Bot. Astro Bot, in the same way you were just talking about turn-based systems, those kind of have gone by the wayside. This does the same thing for platformers, and bringing in a larger amount of people because it's such an easy, fun game to play on a platform that's the number one home console, I think, right now, like of the new generation.
Yeah.
While also at the same,
maybe Switch, but
yeah. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the other games I would put them above Astro Bot in terms of the game mechanics and gameplay itself. Astro Bot goes beyond that with not just staying within its certain model, which is to say platformers, but rather say, in the time that we're at, games can be made differently than they have been. Because going back to Last of Us, all of the issues people complain about with that game, with Naughty Dog style games and the ones that model them after that, I think I just said that the same thing twice, but either way, going away from that direction and back to, well, you can just have simple, fun games, maybe not even necessarily simple, but ones that don't have all of these, extremities that make development.
We don't need that high level of fidelity to have an impactful game like that.
But you can still have high fidelity, just not in the same way that we've grown used to what we think of when we say high fidelity, which is, look, these watermelons, when you shoot them, it looks like an actual bullet went through the watermelon.
Right.
But, hey, look at all these things on the screen that move independently of one another. That's cool. That's fun to see. If it's in a game that has a bit more depth of gameplay than something like Astro Bot does, that can make people think of it in terms of Elden Ring, because Astro Bot, while it has a lot of notoriety or it has a lot of respect within the games industry, a lot of what I've seen online and even gotten from my own friends who aren't as into the games that come out and the industry are like, what's the reason to play this game? What's so great about it? You know, it's not like Elden Ring where they can see that, or Baldur's Gate 3 where they can see that, or even Last of Us and say, oh, that's why it's as good as it is. Last of Us looks like it has an amazing narrative. Elden Ring has all of this cool culture behind it and, you know, a shared sense of accomplishment with how you progress through the game. Baldur's Gate 3 having depth of RPG mechanics, of, you know, of player choice and all that. But Astro Bot, you have to look more into it and look more into the future of how it's going to impact game design. Of, you know, are developers, is the industry going to see this and say, hey, this is something we need to be a bit more, you know, we need to follow more.
I mean, they better.
They better.
I mean, that plus the 1-2 punch of that and It Takes Two. What It Takes Two has done and what Hazelight has been able to do with that.
Yeah.
Right?
Same conversation.
Yeah, it's that same conversation. You don't need all of that to be the most impactful game of the year. Like, you just don't.
No.
I think what Astro Bot reminds everybody, gamers and industry included, is that games can be dorky, they can be fun, they can be childlike and like they can have a lot of wonder and stuff. They don't need to be serious. They don't need sort of a pushback against The Last of Us and the effect The Last of Us have. Both things can exist at the same time, you know, and that's totally fine. And while I don't
they
think
should exist.
I don't think the idea of a 5+ year development cycle is going to go away. I do think there's just room for both. And the problem is that we're a little too focused on that 5-year gap right now. That's where the problem lies.
And we're in it.
Yeah.
So nothing's going to change for the next couple of years.
I think we're at the end of it. I think we've got another wave of games that need to keep cooking and come out. But after that, sure, Naughty Dog will always take 5-6 years to make a game. Sure, whatever, right? But like we used to, like Insomniac's been moving at a quick clip, right? Like the Spider-Man games sure have been taking a while, but like they put out in this generation alone 2 Spider-Man games, a remaster, a Ratchet and Clank game, and something else, Wolverine around the corner or whatever like that. You know, there's room for smaller titles that are just as important as those longer. And when I say smaller, I don't necessarily mean scope or like quality of game. I mean games that just didn't take so long to make. Games that aren't as pretty. The animations aren't as detailed, quote unquote, right? But they are fun and they have good mechanics, or maybe it does have a good story. And its gameplay is a little underbaked, but who cares because this narrative is so good, right? Like there's room enough to be all of these things.
And the medium of video games allows for what a lot don't take advantage of. I feel like you had more of it in the 2000s, which is playing around with art style. Art style is the best way to make up for not having the highest fidelity game. You can make
the indies kind of dominate that space now. But on the AAA level, everything has to be hyper detailed, incredible to look at. Look at all the volumetric fog and the way the ray tracing bounces off the water and all these things. And it's just like, do we need this? I don't know if we need this. I think one thing Astro Bot also reminds us of is that games need to be mechanic focused. That's what makes games so interesting, is the mechanics. The fidelity, the chasing of Hollywood realism, the chasing of how real can we make this animated world look, I think is a mistake. And I think Astro Bot kind of like proves that point. And I hope the industry hears that, in that it could be a cartoony looking game and that's fine. It's still going to be fun to play. I remember a sequel didn't used to mean bigger and more detailed. A sequel used to mean we got this new mechanic. We have this. Yeah. We're gonna flip the formula on its head, and it's gonna be this whole big other thing. And sometimes that'd bite you in the ass, and it'd be something the players don't want. But
it could be like, remember when you played as Jess Sly? Well, get ready.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. You know, let's expand it out to other characters, or just have a different a gameplay twist, a gameplay flip, or something like that. And you just don't get that as much anymore, and it's sad. I think that's how you get Horizons out here. Where like Zero Dawn, great game, really impressive. It came from that studio to have that game and make that big of an impact. That was incredible. Horizon 2 was more of that. And it was prettier. Cool. There was some new stuff in it, But what about it was so different? If you put the two games next to each other and someone who doesn't have a trained artistic eye like that, they're not going to be able to tell the difference.
Exactly. And, this all, to go back to my original kind of point, Astro Bot, all of this is great to say about it. I just hope it takes effect.
Me too.
It's easy to be hopeful because that seems to be a very rational decision to make, to be more like that. But these people don't really base themselves in rationale. They base it off of how much money can I get.
Right.
Not the industry can get, not how much money the studio can get, but how I can get. Usually the big heads, big wigs.
Connor, let's finish this off with a quick conversation. How do we feel about just kind of state of games? Yes, aside from industry, how do we feel about the output of games, the impact of games, how they feel to play? This is more from a consumer perspective. Does this sort of generation, does this first half of the decade match up to what we've seen in the past?
Seeing as how we've only gone through half of it, we already have some powerhouses of games.
Yeah.
I think so, definitely. Now, volume of games, I think it's been great so far, but once again, I think I can't really just think like a consumer here. The industry impacts how many games are going to be made.
Right.
If you go with the model that we just talked about moving away from, realistic, that's how you can get even more than you already do. That's not to say that we haven't this year so far. We have. It's just, it's not healthy for the industry as a whole. And so, even though it's easy and it would be nicer to think in the terms of just a consumer of what it is in the here and now, later down the line, if you're going to complain about the state of games, like they're not so great anymore. Well, that's maybe because you were wanting more of a type of game that was ruining the industry, despite how good it might have been on its own face value. No, it's...
I think a lot of that, like, games aren't great anymore perspective is rooted in ignorance and nostalgia.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely.
And to me, this generation has been really good. Hasn't quite been great yet. Or this decade has been really good, not quite great yet, with a couple of outstanding things. I think it flies above some decades and some generations, or just even some, like, half decades. Like, the... like 2005 to 2010 really wasn't that interesting to me.
I was going to say that, but then you also did have a game year where it was the Spikes Game of the Year award where there was 7 games because there was Red Dead, Brutal Legend, funny enough. There was the finishing of God of War 3, the God of War trilogy with God of War 3. There was Gears of War. They were still wrapping up during that time. This is when Mass Effect was coming out and Dragon Age as well. Bioshock came out during this time. Elder Scrolls, Oblivion, Fallout 3. Fallout New Vegas, even.
Listen, there's always example. There's always going to be a phenomenal game every year, right?
But I think specifically 2005-10s had some powerhouses.
Sure, I think my problem is that really my issue is like 2009 to like 2014.
I would almost say just like, no, yeah, yeah. I'd say almost 2011.
You know, I mean, there's a couple of examples, right? Last of Us, GTA 5, Skyrim, right? There's a couple of examples of really great stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But I just think that late 2000s, early 2010s was a creative weak point, I think, in the industry, right? And of course, there's plenty of examples of where I'm wrong, but I think there's also plenty of examples. How many brown and gray games did we get in that generation? You know, how many of those IPs still exist? The IPs that were founded in that time still exist.
A lot. Well, not that last part. The first part, a lot. But again, that's a game year. That's a period where we had the volume be very high before it started coming down a little bit.
Right. Yeah.
So it kind of offsets that, especially with how many good games were included.
But I
in
mean,
that
like
era.
even now, like. I mean, Dead Space is in this era. That's gone, and that was probably one of the most promising of them. Infamous is gone. Killzone is gone. Resistance is gone. Halo is barely hanging on.
But it was strong that was the strongest it's been in a while.
Yeah, Battlefield is on its deathbed. There's a lot of franchises from that era that just have not really made the cut in continuing. And you see franchises from before that era continue to survive. You know, some not as healthy as others, right? But I mean, we're still getting Ratchet and Clanks.
Yeah.
How are we still getting Ratchet and Clanks? That's insane to me. You're getting for a while you were getting Uncharted. Last of Us is continuing to thrive and be the biggest thing in the world, right? But there's just so many other franchises that like kind of hard to pick them out in a crowd, right? Yeah. Like how many of those franchises can I show to my mom and she'll know what they are? Mm-hmm. How many of them really are there, right? Whereas like if I show my mom something from the PS2, something from the PlayStation 1 or something like that, she may know something, or the Nintendo 64. She may know some of that, right? But that's based on generation of who you're talking about, plus one that's not as prevalent of a gamer. Whereas nowadays, I think down the line, you'll have almost most people be able to recognize a game from so-and-so, like 2019, let's say. Yes, yeah, 19, yeah. I think 15 on changes that conversation where you start seeing color come back and brightness come back and so forth. And I think Astro Bot is sort of the big hurrah towards that type of attitude. My nephew loves Astro Bot. He's playing Astro Bot. He's obsessed with it. It's his favorite thing ever, right? That is to him what like Ratchet and Clank was to me, right? Where did those games go? They were gone for a long time. How many kids? Because like in that early 2010s era that I'm talking about, dominated by these first-person shooters. How realistic can we get? How grounded are we? The World War II shooter died because of that era, right? And like it was just dominated by Call of Duty. And now, granted, sure, Call of Duty can be recognized by my mom, but I think any realistic wartime shooter, she's gonna guess Call of Duty. Yeah, and that's gonna be it. If I showed her Killzone, she's not gonna know Killzone. If I showed her Resistance, she's not gonna know Resistance. And there was a lot of franchises like that back in the day. So yeah, I don't know if. But all of this to say, I think we're in a better place than we are there creatively. Industry-wise, I don't think we're there. Objectively worse, to be honest. Right? Yeah. But, but by then you get into a more nuanced conversation. I think when this generation, when this decade ends, I think it's going to be thought of fairly highly on the game side, and I think the pain is going to fade from the story, and the industry part is going to fade from the story. Especially if it improves. Oh, yeah. Oh, it will. Yeah. Well, improves and not having a massive crash, which I feel like if you were to see substantial improvement, it would come with that to precursor. I think we're in the crash now. Mm-hmm. I think we've been in the crash the last couple of years. It could get worse, Tavin. It could. It definitely could. But I think this is it. Mm-hmm. I think what we're in is the closest to crash we're getting. Full crash of like video games aren't going anywhere is my thing. Yeah. And a crash implies that the industry could die. And I don't think... No, not necessarily. Crashes are included in like the stock market crash of prior to the Great Depression. Fuck, I flumpered. Great Recession. Great Depression. The Great Recession was 2008, which is another case. Those were both crashes. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm talking the housing market. You were on the stock market. But my apologies. Point is, markets, industries crash. They always recover. That's not the worry about video games is crashing and staying burning wreckage. It could. Certain industries could, but not video games. Yeah. And so the more worrisome thing is it crashing in the first place and you losing all of this momentum rather than directing it in a proper way. Yeah. I just feel like a crash would imply some key players go down and you never see them again. Like Epic with Fortnite, I could see that going away and never coming back. Right. Even still, that's not necessarily the case. I'm just using other crashes as an example. The Great Recession. Those people who caused it were bailed out, and they were better off by the end of it rather than normal citizens around the world. Right, but it didn't solve the problem. The problem didn't get solved, whereas like after the Great Depression, work was done to kind of help that and restore. That wasn't done from the 2008 crisis. That's just to say that a crash doesn't necessarily mean like entire industries and companies collapse. Okay, yeah, you're right. You're right on that. But I guess my point is like, I don't know. Maybe it's just the smallest bit of optimist in me, where I don't think it's going to be as bad as people think it is. Mm-hmm. I hope it's not. I'm kind of being more pessimistic at this point. I think we're in the worst of it now. Mm-hmm. I hope. God, I hope it's bad enough. Oh my God, I hope we're in the worst of it now. I don't expect the problem to go away anytime soon, but I would hope by 2028 we're well on our way back up. That'd be around the time for it to start happening. Yeah. If it's still like in this kind of space, that's not boding well. Oh, listen, we're still getting thousands of layoffs this year. Yeah. Like it's still going to happen. I would hope for a slowdown by 26. I would hope we're past the. I think this last year was probably the peak of it, and I just hope it's a continue decline from here. I think this year is still we're still gonna have a lot of stories of it and so forth. But I mean, we're all gonna have to see. And ladies and gentlemen, we will be right here with you talking about it every week. Make sure you'll watch us live over Monday afternoons, twitch.tv/TwoPennyGames, and every Tuesday at 8 a.m. Central Time, youtube.com/@TwoPennyGames, and mainstream podcast services of your choice. You see how I've been watching a lot of House MD, and now I'm just rubbing my leg like it fucking hurts. And this is monkey see, monkey do.
Yep.
Anyways, make sure you subscribe, follow us for more. Give us a rating on all of the audio platforms, please. DSPs, we really would appreciate it. And until next time, have a great time. And Connor, say goodbye to the people.
Bye, and see you in a second.
What's poppin', players? Welcome back to a Two Penny Game Club, your monthly video game book club. I am your host, Tavin the Critical Eye Bothel, here with my good friend and co-host. Say hello to the people, the big chill Phil Shoemaker.
I'm actually the all-seeing eye.
Oh, okay. All right. And then alongside me as well is the self-anointed Connor Elliott. Because
he named himself?
There was one week of the piggy bank where he named himself the king, and then there was a Gamescast where he gave himself some title or whatever. So I'm like, you know what? He's the self-anointed.
Oh. I would see Connor as a duke.
I could do that.
I think you said that in the Gamescast or whatever because you were involved in that as well. So, anyways, the self-anointed Connor Elliott. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, this is your Two Penny Game Club. Every month in the background, me and these fine gentlemen play a game for review at the beginning of each new month. And then we come to you, we review it, we rank it amongst the other games that we've played in the series, such as things like Final Fantasy VII, such as Metal Gear Solid, Prey, what's another one we did? Doom. A whole bunch of things. We've been here for a long time. There is a playlist in the description down below of every episode we've done so far. We ranked those games amongst each other, and this month we are reviewing Bioshock, gaming classic.
So excited to find out what we're gonna play after.
Gaming classic that we play, and then of course at the end of the episode we will discover what we play next. We alternate between one of us picking or the giant gamer wheel. The game wheel did pick Bioshock for us, and that's why we're playing it. And then, Connor, you are selecting a game at the end of this episode. What will it be? I'm very excited to find out. And, of course, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you subscribe, follow us for all the content on all of our social medias. Links are in the description down below because these game clubs are where the fun are for me. This is my favorite show that we do. I love doing it every time. And this one's
colluding.
This one, I think, will be... no exception. This is going to be one of them ones for the record books, let me tell you. So, Bioshock, developed by Irrational Games, August 21st, 2007. As of 2024, gentlemen, this shocked me. As of 2024, Bioshock has sold more than 43 million copies worldwide, making the series one of the best-selling video game franchises of all time. Oh, you know what? This is the game series. I want Bioshock 1 sale. That's where that big-ass number's coming from. I was like, there's no way.
That's impressive.
Okay, I'm seeing 3 million copies as of June 2009. The whole franchise has sold 43 million. That makes more sense to me. There we go. And then if we jump over, Bioshock has a Metacritic rating of 96.
Jesus.
Indeed. And, gentlemen, while I was playing Bioshock... I found myself in a moment of crisis, and this is before we get into actual reviews and thoughts, because, spoilers, this one's going to be one of those ones where maybe the conversation here will be a little more understanding. But this is one of those ones that when I do the breakout TikTok short review of it all and so forth, the internet's gonna be on me for this one. They're gonna have some comments for me on this one. I know they will. And quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, that's because I believe Bioshock is nearly a mediocre game. I think, you know what? Actually, let me start with the love. The love is what you hear the most about Bioshock is absolutely true. Bioshock excels in atmosphere, in environmental world design. Rapture feels like a real place. It's fully realized. It's fun to explore and see its different elements. That's all I got. That's all I got to say positive about Bioshock.
Can I say I'm a little thrown here because going into this whole thing for the past like month, you've been saying that you're going last.
I did think I was going to go last, but then, I just want to get this part out of the way because it's just what I'm just going to get what I have to say, and then we're going to move on. And then I think I'm immediately going to jump to Connor, who I think has an opposite opinion of me. I think Bioshock is almost mediocre, like in pretty much every facet of it. Let me start with gameplay. Gameplay does not feel good in this game. It feels clunky and unimpactful. The sound designs are pretty solid, but so like it can trick you with feelings of impact through sound design, but like the shotgun has no punch to it. Like, other than it just kills things really fast. Like, it does not feel good to use. It sounds great, but it does not feel good. I just generally think combat is repetitive and boring, and it's solved pretty much every combat encounter is solved the exact same way, and that is to just shoot them to death or beat them to death with your wrench. Now, there's a few like things that you can add to it to kind of make it a little bit more engaging. You can hit them with a plasmid. You can craft your build in a way to where your wrench does extra damage, which is what I was doing. And then there's a couple of other small things, but a lot of these plasmids, I think most of them are pretty useless. The most useful ones become apparent because they give them to you first. And then you just end up electrocuting everything the entire way through. And I just think gameplay-wise, this is just a very disappointing and bland video game. Like, there's nothing really special about Bioshock's gameplay mechanics. Even when they try to throw breaks into the gameplay loop with things like hacking, that immediately becomes way overused and way too tedious and way too repetitive. If there was, I like the mini game of how hacking is in this game, where it's basically pipes. You're just pipes, and you direct the water to it from a beginning to an end point, and you're on a time limit with that. That's a solid mini game to throw in there to break up the gameplay loop. But everything can be hacked, and it's the same mini game every single time. There's no variation depending upon whether you're hacking a first aid machine or a turret or a security camera or one of the flying drones or any of that. There's no variety at all in the hacking. It's the same every single time. And it just gets annoying to do to the point to where I just started throwing money at the problem. And I think that's another part of my issues with the gameplay of this. There's no consequences in this game. This game has zero punishment to the player at all outside of a little short walk. Borderlands at least had the illusion of punishment by costing you some money every time you respawn. Now, in reality, that didn't mean anything in Borderlands because they throw so much money at you, it doesn't really matter. But here, they don't even have the decency to do that. So you're just constantly just throwing yourself at enemies because there's no other reason to do anything else. It's the fastest and most effective way to do it is to just shoot them or electrocute them and then beat them with your wrench again and again and again. And I'll be honest, I only really ever died to Big Daddies, which, okay, so the Big Daddies are 2-round fights. I fight them, I get them to half health, I die, I come back, and I kill them again. And it's just so frustrating to me that this is all they have to do. And I'm only really going this hard because Bioshock is redeemed as a classic game. It's redeemed as one of the best games ever made. 96 on Metacritic to me is outrageous. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't think this is a bad game. I don't even truly believe it's mediocre, but it's getting there. It's really close to mediocre.
It's a 2007 96,
Not acceptable. I was alive in 2007. I was playing games before and after 2007. And let me transition to narrative here, because that's really where this game hangs its hat on, And I think that is the biggest disappointment of the game in its entirety. This narrative sucks. This is bad. This is the most shallow, underwritten, and poorly executed narrative. I'm specifically talking about the player character's journey. Underwritten narrative I've ever seen. Now, things like the audio diaries, how the different characters interact with each other, the intercom system where you hear people talk to each other and so forth like that, that's pretty well written. Those characters are pretty well developed. Andrew Ryan is one of gaming's best antagonists, if you want to give him that, right? And it's so disappointing to me because those themes are so strong. These themes of capitalism destroying everything, how you can have all the best promise in the world and have what should be a beautiful society turned to ruin because of greed and because of selfishness and all of these things, and how the idea of pulling yourselves up by your bootstraps is a lie. Like, I love all of that. It's very Iron Rand. And I love all of that. But the problem is that's not the main conflict of the game. The main conflict of the game is you are just some dude who's in a plane crash, and for reasons the plane crash happened, I understand that part, yes. But you're just a dude in a plane crash trying to survive. So now we've got elements of this first-person shooter action game that it wants to be. We've got elements of the sort of survival horror that it wants to be, resource managing that it wants to do, and none of it feels very effective. This is like if you've never played a video game before in your life, these are probably really cool, innovative mechanics. But I've played a bunch of video games, and I find this to be driveling slop. And then tying it into this character journey of like, oh, are you going to be a good guy or bad guy, dependent entirely on little sisters, is the most asinine, arbitrary fucking moral choice I've ever seen in a game ever. Are you going to murder this little girl or save her? What the fuck kind of choice is that? Of course I'm going to save her. And of course, they try to balance it out about, oh, you get more Adam if you kill her. Okay, but you also get gifts every two sisters that you save, and that totally balance out the extra Adam that you would have gotten. So it's not really a choice then. And on top of that, it has the gall to have two different endings that mean nothing, because the endings have nothing to do with the main conflict of the game. And let's get to that one. The Would You Kindly twist is the worst twist I've seen in games in a long time. That's a stupid twist. That is an underbaked twist. A good twist is something that recontextualizes the events of an entire story. A good twist is, hold on, Phil. A good twist is one that like makes you go, oh shit, that's what this is about. The problem with the Would You Kindly twist, and it's so appropriate that we're reviewing this game right after Metal Gear Solid 2, the problem with the Would You Kindly twist is to have the idea and the meta-narrative about what is player agency. Are you as the player actually making any choices, or are you just on the rails of whatever game we decide to put you in? That only works if you actually give the player a choice. There's no choice in this game. And then as soon as the Would You Kindly twist happens, they do behind the scenes, off-screen brain surgery on you and completely throw it away again. Like, it may as well have just not happened. So why is it there? There is no point. God, there's a lot of spittle on my mic.
That one moment.
So I got the pop filter.
Yeah, I know. There's just no point in that twist being there. It gives zero difference to the plot. If you took it out of the plot, nothing changes. Absolutely nothing changes. But you know what would fix this, Connor? A real simple change. A really, really simple change. Let's say you're developing a video game, Connor, and you have these narrative beats that you want to play out in the order you want them to play out in, right? It's a linear game. There's no choice in like differences in how you explore your environments. You hit level 1, 2, 3, 4 in that order every single time, right? That's the structure of your game. That's fine. Plenty of masterpieces have been made like that, right? But you want to have this idea of player choice and player agency being one of your big climactic moment of the game, right? You know how you do that, Connor, effectively, is you give players the idea, you insert that they did have a choice at any point in this. And you know how you hide that to make the player still complete that narrative the way you want them to? You know how you hide that? You make it the most obvious thing that you would do anyways, because more than likely, the very first time you hear Would You Kindly is, would you kindly please pick up that radio? You as the player are, of course, going to pick up the radio. You know what would make this twist interesting? Let the player wait 45 seconds and then drop the door and let them leave without the radio. Because they're still going to go through the events of the game exactly the same way, but now they don't have, what's his name? Atlas Frank Fontaine. Now they don't have Frank Fontaine in your ear the whole time. So now it is player agency. So now it is choice. The game doesn't change. It's just now it's a little harder to get through because you don't have somebody in your ear telling you what to do next. But it's still easy to get, like, it's still the same path. You know, that instantly makes the twist worth it. Just that small little difference would make it actually have a statement. But instead, it's this flaccid dick, underbaked, underthought premise of, oh, are you as the player really have any free will? Yeah, motherfucker, I turn your game off. That's the free will choice that you give me. I either play the game or I don't, because there's no other choices to do. I can't sit on top of the lighthouse and wait for rescue. I can't ignore the radio. I can't not come in contact with Big Daddies. Like, these aren't choices that you're giving me. So the whole twist is so arbitrary and useless. It may as well not even be there. And the fact that they wave it in front of your face like they are some great gaming auteur, like they are doing something with this, is the most insulting part of it. That's the part where it's like, oh, you think I'm a fucking idiot. You don't think I'm an intelligent person at all. And that feeds into my complaints about gameplay, because the gameplay is just as brain dead as the thoughts behind this narrative. Connor,
There's you.
My question
Yes.
that I wanted to ask, but Tavin wouldn't answer my question. He wouldn't shut the fuck up. He said, "Hold on a second, Phil." I was like, would the twist of the Wujikami be more impactful had we not already known it was coming?
In the moment, I would have been like, "Oh shit, that's crazy." But you give me 45 minutes to think about it, and I'd still feel the same way.
I don't know. I just feel sure I would agree with you that it's not a very impactful twist, because we've experienced that in a perfect parallel for MGS2, right? Where it actually is a good version of that. But the fact that that's on the same level of like the most well-known twist in things as like Bruce Willis was dead the whole time in The Sixth Sense. Fucking
I just saw the movie 7, that ending.
Yeah,
But those are good twists.
Fucking What's in the Box.
Those are good twists that are well thought out. It doesn't matter if you know the twist or not; they still work. Like, and on re-examination, this is my second time playing Bioshock. I didn't think the twist was that great the first time either, and now I think it's awful. Like, I genuinely think this is a terrible twist. Like, it doesn't matter if I knew it going in beforehand or not. What's poppin', players? So obviously Connor's audio was muted for his entire portion of the review, so we're just going to intersplice a quick cut right here so he can get his thoughts off uninterrupted real quick, and then we'll cut back to the real review where the audio gets fixed fairly shortly after this. So real quick, Connor, what did you think of Bioshock?
Taking it from the top, my thoughts on Bioshock are that it, in the grand scheme of things, is an overrated game, with more looking at it how it was released back in the day. Because now, you're left with a game that has a fun combat system that's lacking a great amount of depth. It kind of fulfills that purpose with plasmids, allowing you to do more than just run and gun. But the issue is that, first of all, you never really, in the throes of combat, feel the need to switch out all that often. You usually have a gun in your hand, so you end up using that to take them out, rather than, sometimes afterwards thinking, well, I probably should use a plasmid, or, maybe at some point before the fight, during the fight, you're like, wait, I can burn this guy, and I'll do that. Very often, you don't feel super incentivized to use them, especially because there's not much of a negative to dying in that game. You basically, just get sent back a little bit, and then you walk a little bit back to where you were before, and the enemies still have their same damage from when you last were encountering them. So the guns feel nice to use, and there are fun plasmids to use as well. It's just their function within the game. It's much cooler of a concept than it is in terms of practicality. Now that kind of extends to which is more a conceptual thing, which is the style of a game, the setting of it, the tone, all of which Bioshock nails. Tavin would have said so in his point of the review, and I agreed with him. The 1960s era style use of music and atmosphere, people always seem to like that. Going off of Fallout, people like it when they do it there, and the futuristic take it takes on it. This one basically does the same exact thing, just taking it in, just being set in the actual 1960s rather than a future that's based off of it. And, it sucks you into that world, along with all of the audio recordings that you get that allow you to become a nerd with characters, enamored, or you start to like characters that you don't really actually see in the game. They're either dead, or they won't be along the ride that long, or maybe they die very soon after you meet them. But despite that, it feels like a lived-in place. And all of the shit that ends up happening to make Rapture as crazy of a whack job place as it is because of that downward spiral that's given to you through environmental storytelling and just outright narrative storytelling through those audio recordings that I was talking about. That also showed itself in the designs of, the guns. Obviously, they're era guns, but the upgrades you get to them all have cool little physical changes to them that once again work within the setting that is Rapture. The narrative is usually what's talked about a lot due to its big twist, which I still find is entertaining. It doesn't seem like it really is the most thought out because it's not really. It doesn't really dive that much into the intricacies of brainwashing and conditioning. It's more just for the purpose of the famous twist of "Would you kindly," which when you take away the fact that it's centered around a cool character like Andrew Ryan or the moment twist back when it was released in 2007, I want to say it still holds up pretty well. It just that's one of those elements that isn't as good as people seem to remember it, which leads to this kind of overrated view the game has taken on as years have gone by. Yeah, I mean, other than that, I think we'll just get right back to the full conversation that we were having with the gang.
Phil, it is your first time playing. How did you feel about Bioshock your first time through?
I didn't dislike my time to the level that it seems Tavin did. I looked at this as kind of the precursor to kind of like the arcane style games, minus like some of the stealth elements. Fucking microphone's falling down. Anyway,
You're not getting picked up. Oh, are you fucking kidding?
What's that?
Wait, maybe that was on.
Thing. Go? Yeah? Uh-oh. Phil, talk.
Oh, no.
Phil, talk, please.
Hello.
Oh, he's
Oh,
done.
that's not that.
Hello,
That's not real Phil.
hello.
That's not real Phil. Okay, got it. I think we're okay.
So
We got
we're all good?
PTSD from
Tavin
last
didn't
time.
fire it up?
I was about to cry so fucking hard.
Anyway, so to me, the whole "would you kindly" twist, like, sure, it's not as good as the one in MGS2. Straightforward, like, it's not as good. For me, I'm more into the speech that Andrew Ryan gives you in that confrontation.
Yeah.
Even though like I've seen that like done to death. Like there's a really good video from Hey Ash, What You Playing, where they like literally just reenact that, and it's really funny.
I guess let me reiterate real quick my point about the writing. Dialogue is super well written.
Yeah.
Story is not. The story is poorly written.
Yeah.
Continue.
And I'll also agree with Connor that Frank Fontaine / Atlas is a very very compelling villain to hate. Very, very easily hateable. I did want to kind of shut him up, and you do if you beat him at the end, I think overall this story that they gave us was I have to agree with Tavin, not great. And also Tavin kind of hit the nail on the head for me, where dialogue was very, very well written, at least in my opinion, as opposed to like the overarching story being, you're in a plane crash, you go down into this thing and down into Rapture, I should say, this underwater city. And I liked Tavin's ideas where like you kind of give the player more of a choice, and it does explore that story of like player agency more thoroughly, where like, oh, maybe you don't pick up the radio, right? Maybe you don't even go down to Rapture and you just wait for rescue. And it's like one of those silly like endings. Like I think of the ending in Prey, where you can literally just take the escape pod and abandon it. That's kind of where I think about that.
Far Cry 4, where you sit at the table for 20 minutes and just wait. A Far Cry game did this better than Bioshock. Come on.
I have disagreements with that, but go ahead. I'm going to argue from your position. Sorry, Phil.
No, go ahead. I liked the combat in this game from what's the word I'm looking for? I was going to say room to room, but that's not exactly what I mean.
Moment to moment.
Moment to moment. Thank you. I don't know why I had brain fart there. But the splicers fighting them versus fighting the big daddies, I feel like I kind of just turn my brain off when fighting the big daddies, where like I'm literally just I'm playing Ring Around the Rosie around like a random pillar that I can just avoid shots for, and kind of just pepper them up. And like I heavily used the like shotgun, where like I would just shoot them with a shotgun over and over. And then when I had to reload in that, I would switch to my plasmid for shock, and then I would pepper them up with the crossbow. Right. I think this game would be a lot better if you could kind of like dual wield, like if you have the pistol in one hand and then you use the shock plasmid in the other. But then I feel like other games ended up doing that further down the road, right? Maybe not necessarily
does
Bioshock
Infinite do
games.
that?
I haven't played any other ones, but like other games of this style where you have the fighting ability in your left hand and you have the gun in the right hand, right?
Yeah.
Where I think that would just play a lot better.
Does Infinite do that? I don't remember.
Infinite, you always have your gun out, but you can use your plasmids whenever.
At the same time.
Yeah, you just
Okay.
press
So
a button and you use
the
it
hand's not
immediately.
out, but you just throw it
Yeah.
out. Yeah, okay.
You just throw it out.
I feel like that would fix a lot of the combat issues I have with this game.
I would use plasmids more, like I did in Infinite.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's when eventually we do get into Infinite down the line. I think I'll enjoy that experience a lot more. Because from what I hear, either you're a huge Bioshock fan in general, you like. Oh, sorry, that's the first one, right? The second one is you love Bioshock, but you don't like Bioshock Infinite. And then the third camp is you thought the first couple Bioshock games were just fine, and then you loved Infinite, right?
I'm probably in that
Those are
third.
the kind of the camps
Because
I've
I've
heard
always
on the internet.
I've always thought Infinite was the best of the series by a pretty good lead. Like the worst part about Infinite is like sort of the ham-fisted politics of it that are way better executed in this game.
And the story's bad.
No, I think the story's good. The Elizabeth and Booker DeWitt story, that's a good story.
Their characters work well together, yeah, but still story.
I love
story.
I love the final twist in that game. I think it's good.
I don't know.
Love is strong,
probably
but
the
I really
Bioshock
like it.
that I
Yeah.
know the least about.
Yeah, you're right. It's good.
Oh no, sorry, no, that's not the Bioshock. I know the least about Bioshock 2.
Just a big daddy.
But yep. Anyway, that
Cool.
is what I have to say about the combat. I liked Connor mentioning the different plasmids. The ones that I kind of rocked with were the shock, the flame, the telekinesis, and then the like Big Daddy hypnotize
Yeah.
thing. So I
Yeah.
would throw something at a Big Daddy and it would fight for me.
Those
I
are
thought that was really cool.
I think the big four that you would use. Connor brought up a couple that can be used in certain scenarios, but for the most part, you can. I mean, not even you don't even need the telekinesis, but like, yeah, the others will get you through the rest of the game, no problem.
Well, telekinesis was really useful because there's a lot of items like hidden on top of things.
Yeah.
Or like in like a grate or something.
Yeah.
So I liked that one a lot. And then when I did end up like getting more slots for plasmids, I did get like the bees. I didn't really use the wind blast. That was one of the ones I like didn't use. I didn't use the wind blast and the one where you can like instantly make all the security stuff go to somebody.
Yeah, I didn't use that one.
'Cause
No, it's not good.
I
just
would
hacked
really-
everything.
it's perfectly usable if you just hack a camera, right?
It's
Hacking
better
a
if you
camera
do.
does the exact same thing. But anyway, I really liked my like game, like my playing of this game. I put it on the Portal, so that worked really, really well. And then I for a lot of it, I just would just kind of tune the story out because it just wasn't that interesting to me. But like I had the subtitles on, so I was like reading the dialogue, and I was like, man, this is really, I'm into this.
Yeah.
And when I was listening to the game, I thought a lot of the voice acting was really good. Specifically, I really liked Atlas and Frank Fontaine's voice. I thought they were like menacing when he was Frank, and then like I just really wanted to help Atlas, you know.
Thanks, boyo.
Andrew Ryan,
yeah, right.
Tenenbaum, like
Andrew
those
Ryan was fantastic, probably the
great
best
characters.
performance in the
Yeah.
game.
A transatlantic
I
voice.
also really liked what was his name, Tenenbaum? Is that who was you were helping her with the
right.
little sisters?
Tenenbaum's the one with
Yeah,
the little sisters.
Tenenbaum.
Who's the who's like the botanist?
Yeah, I can't remember her name because she dies.
Yeah, she just dies.
Spoiler.
Yes, I don't remember.
Don't really.
I don't remember
Su
her.
Chong's good.
Yes, I liked him too.
Evil, cruel scientist.
Yeah, very, very like just cruel in that like cruel analytical like you know I stuck a needle in this rabbit's eye, you know it's blind now, right? Like,
As it tends to
it's
do.
not a specific example, but that's kind of the vibe I was getting from that. But those are kind of where the positives end for me. I did also really like the hacking, but there were towards the end, I was just getting kind of very repetitive.
Just auto
I
hack.
just started buying things. Yeah.
I did too, yeah.
No, I mean, I would buy the auto hack things that you could just, oh, let me use one of these. I would like stock up on those anytime.
Not even that. I would just buy the hack.
Oh, okay. No, I didn't do that.
I would hack the machine.
I maybe did that once because money was a precious resource for me because I would try to buy ammo and make sure I was stocked up on ammo, which, you know, Connor, you made a really good point earlier where you get to that point where you were trying to cure your hypnosis and it makes you cycle through all of the different plasmids. And I liked that segment, but then it kind of called attention to how I was playing the game. And it was me using the plasmids very secondarily to my arsenal of weapons. And I think this game would have been stronger had there been more of a focus on the plasmids. There were some like kind of cool puzzle solving elements with the plasmids. Like you had to melt some ice with the fire. You had to you could electrify water to kill some early enemies, which was kind of neat.
It was really annoying me how like that would only work in literal pools of water and not just like puddles.
Yeah. I think one of my least favorite segments in the game were kind of like back to back, and it was the finding the pieces of the Big Daddy suit.
Didn't like that either.
And then when you have to like kind of guide the little sister to the end, and it's like I kind of didn't understand why. Okay, so I kind of heal this little sister, right? And I make her good again, but she's still stopping all these dead bodies and poking them with needles and doing all this random shit that is obviously like,
yeah,
it's just
so
weird.
It's almost as if player agency doesn't matter in this game.
No, they specifically mention when she first does that, Tenenbaum comes on the radio, and she laments about how they were so manipulated.
Yes, they give you a reason, Connor, but that shouldn't them just telling you so that they can have this gameplay moment of where you stop and shoot things.
That literally,
that's not reflective of your choices in the game at all.
It's entirely reflective of what happens in the narrative, which is that this mental conditioning game isn't just a, obviously it gets solved in the sense that the game itself gets rid of it, but through like mental conditioning and then doing like a special Deus Ex Machina of, oh, here's this potion you can drink that completely eradicates the after effects of, what's left from your mental conditioning. But these are just little girls and they're just walking around immediately instinctively in the same way you were taught to do a task, doing a task without really thinking about it.
Yeah.
It kind of gets the whole entire thing of how this environment has rid people of their autonomy in many ways, which to your point earlier, I guess as we get to the general reviews.
But then why make the choice? Why is there a choice? Because if you're killing little sisters, a little sister still comes out and does all those things. So, like, if I'm saving them, what is the difference? The little 35-second cutscene at the end that sucks? It's a bad cutscene. Like, so why am I doing it?
I hear where you're coming from there, Connor, and I like your reasoning for it, but it comes across from a gameplay perspective. It comes across as an excuse.
We are video games. We need to take advantage of this medium as a interactive medium. And Bioshock fails to do that on every level.
But in the grander scheme of that, right? Because usually you're the one to say this. But at the time when the game was made, that was when you had game after game. I mean, Metal Gear Solid. Most games are not Metal Gear Solid. Most games are not.
They're not.
Exactly.
But this game went into development well after Metal Gear Solid.
That doesn't matter, though. Most games, after Metal Gear Solid, before Metal Gear Solid, you go through and you do the mission objectives that are given to you by the guy in the radio or your best friend or whatever the fuck game you're talking about. And you just do them, right? That has always been rote. Metal Gear Solid might change that up a little bit, but every other game still, you follow the objective that's written to you. Yes. And in this one, it does that same exact thing, but undermines you by saying, "Oh, well, you're not actually doing these things."
I can jump to other games. Shadow of the Colossus did this theme better. Final Fantasy VII did this.
Shadow of the Colossus just hid about whether you were doing something that was objectively evil or for a good reason. But it was kind of also obvious that it was bad in the sense that you're serving an ancient voice that's, hey, kill these things.
Yes, and it has an emotional impact on the player because the player is doing it. There is no emotion in Bioshock. You do not feel any type of way when you bash Andrew Ryan over the head with a golf club.
Well, because that's the entire thing, is that you're playing a nameless protagonist, a nameless guy. Shadow of the Colossus, it's a person. They have a very personal reason of why they're going through the story.
That makes this even worse, because if you go the silent protagonist route, that means you forcibly put the player in the protagonist's shoes. The protagonist is now effectively the player. You are not Solid Snake. You are not Cloud. That's a character, you know? Cloud kind of roams somewhere in the middle because of where 1996 is or whatever. But you are not Cloud. You are not Solid Snake. But you are the Bioshock guy because this isn't a character. So you have to insert yourself into it, and then they just consistently throughout the entire game bash you over the head. Make the choice. Make a choice. Make a choice.
What you're
only to tell you that there is no choice, and if we're being honest, there is no choice at all anyway.
So go into what you're going to say.
I do just want to say, because like you mentioned, you kind of said something about doing something and like, oh, it wants you to feel bad for it.
Yeah, sure,
I said that.
Oh,
no, you said something about like, you don't feel bad about bashing Ranger Ryan over the head, and I agree with you. I don't. I feel like the only time in this game where I would feel bad is if I took the route where I'm killing the little sisters, right? And that would make me feel bad. Like, and that's a choice that it gives you. But like we talked about, why would you make that choice whenever the other choice is so obvious?
Yeah, there's no reason to make the choice of killing little sisters. There's a reason to kill Colossus. Is it kind of thin or whatever? Yes, but they do enough with the presentation in Shadow of the Colossus, with the art of Shadow of the Colossus, with the cinematography and the direction and the lighting of Shadow of the Colossus to tell you that, oh, this is somebody this character cares about, so he's going to go on this journey and go and do these terrible things, and you're along for the ride because you're that guy through the medium of video game, right? Like, but they do enough to make that work. Bioshock is not the case. Like, you don't care that you're killing splicers. That's not a big deal to you. But, you know, juxtapose that against The Last of Us. And I know that's further down the line. But The Last of Us, you kill a clicker, you hear its dying breaths. It sounds like it's getting words out. That there's still a human in there. You feel it, right? You don't feel that way when you kill a splicer. You don't really feel that way when you kill a Big Daddy. You feel kind of bad when you kill a Big Daddy because the little sister starts crying. But then you immediately wave your little magic hand over and she's fine. So what are we doing? This is the most, like, simpleton version of empathy and of deep narrative I've ever seen.
Tavin, you brought up the worst example that you possibly could have with Last of Us. In the
sense
that,
yeah, I was going to say, I don't feel bad for killing clickers.
Or even regular enemies where the narrative tries to make you feel like that's an element of it, but it never is.
No, I disagree. Well, when you shoot a regular dude in the throat and he starts choking on his own blood to death, you go, fuck, that's dark. Like
no. This is again the issue with.
Then I just question your humanity, Connor.
Dude,
like, because come on, dude, what are we doing?
You've always over exaggerated like that impact in Last of Us Part 2. Most people don't give a shit. I'm just saying most people. I certainly don't. And the fact that it then tries to tie that in with named characters when you just did it to a bunch of unnamed people because they didn't necessarily matter because they're in the confines of the game.
Well, you're on a game. You're on a game that I'm not talking about right now. That's the same thing in the first game. The first game does the same thing. Sure, they're not going, Sarah, when you shoot somebody in the face. Okay, whatever. I don't think the big name thing is a big thing. Like, I think that's a weak argument, right? You feel bad because you shoot someone in the throat and they start choking to death on their own blood. That feels bad. You blast a clicker in the face and or you sneak up on a clicker while they're kind of sleeping and you can hear them in pain going, it hurt. Like, and there's like just like simple small little phrases of there if you're actually paying attention to the details in the game design that like make you feel something, make you go, oh shit, that's crazy. Now, it doesn't change how you're going to behave because why would you? It's a survival game. But in here, the splicers are all just evil, crazy maniacs. They may as well be Arkham bad guys. Like, what are we doing? And then you want to wave it in my face as if like I've actually been doing the bad thing all wrong. You want to smack me on the nose like I'm a fucking dog? Fuck you. This is not not fuck you. Fuck the game.
No, but bad thing of killing splicers. When does it ever make you feel bad for that?
Exactly.
Yeah, because you wouldn't. Why waste time on that?
But the game wants you to feel like, oh, these are victims of things or whatever, and it wants to do that same thing in these other games that we're talking about. But then it wants to make you feel bad for killing a Big Daddy, like you feel bad for killing a Colossus in Shadow of the Colossus, but you don't because you know objectively this is the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Like the Big Daddy, I understand that, but the game never tries to show that you should feel sympathetic for these people in the sense that you feel bad for killing them.
The game presents splicers as victims. They are victims of their environment. That is in the way that you feel bad for them. But the game does nothing other than the talking that the game does to you, the splicers don't seem like they don't want to do what they're doing. Well, the splicers just seem like psychopathic maniacs. So of course I'm going to kill them. The game almost feels like it wants you to go non-violent. It almost feels that way. You don't, because there's no choice to, but it feels like it makes you feel like that's an option.
The game at never point does that at all. Most of the characters that we see are shown to be ruthless, selfish. There's like one guy on the radio who's not, and even then he still kind of talks about like killing people without that much of a regard for, you know, the humanity of it, and talks more about, oh, I care about rapture, not really the people in it. It was more the place and what it represents, rather than at any point thinking that you're sympathetic to these people. Even Tenenbaum, it talks about how like the most sympathetic character is, oh, she sympathized more with the Nazis.
Connor, take that a step forward. Andrew Ryan is some guy who's put this wondrous environment together. Put this I can't think of the fucking words that I want to. He's put this like wonderful place together, but he's tricked them. These people are victims. Everybody you come across in this game is a victim of Andrew Ryan. Like that's how this works out. So yes, you're right. He only cares about the grand scope of what Rapture is and the promise of Rapture, but he doesn't do anything to fulfill that promise. So all these people come here, they move their families here, and then get victimized by just the thought capitalism of it all. And my problem is that's more interesting than the actual narrative that they force down your throat.
Well, two different things. First of all, the capitalism element can be tied into the fact that it got to a point where they're breeding human beings for the sole purpose of self-interest, which is Frank Fontaine's purpose with your main character. But beyond that, back to Andrew Ryan, his entire point was just to create a place where they're free from the masters. He's always very apparently been, you are looking after yourself and your own interests, and if you fail to do so, that's on you and nobody else. That was from the get-go his entire message of Rapture.
But then he gatekeeps and hoards all the resources for himself.
Yeah, because
Andrew Ryan is just as much of a con man as Frank Fontaine. They are the exact same in their motivations and their actions.
Yeah, he's a hypocrite.
They do the exact same thing. So the whole pull yourself up by your bootstraps is a lie. He is lying to people when he tells people that.
He's right about that. It just he leaves out the part that includes himself. Where if he can make something happen, regardless of the ethics of it, well, then they happen because it's the concept of power is all that matters. And he saw that through to the very end, even with his own death, because he was in a situation where he couldn't escape. And rather than be like pleading, he was like, oh, well, I might be being killed, but I'm being killed by you, a slave, while everything I've done has been of my own volition. You're just a puppet. So really, who's the pathetic one here? He thinks he lived by his ideals. He didn't. Because at the end of the day, he started interfering when it no longer went his way.
I see that scene differently.
Yeah?
He's pleading with your character the entire way up. All the way up to his he's in a tower, right? He's at like the top of a tower. All the way up his tower, he's pleading with you, but he's doing it in different ways. He's not doing it in the way of like, please don't kill me, please don't do that. He's not like begging in that sense. But the whole a man chooses a slave, whatever. Obeys. That's pleading. It's just done in a different way. He's trying to empower the character, you, the player, into not killing him.
But
the character is a slave, so he's going to kill him. But he's trying to break you from it, is what he's doing.
No, he's not. The only reason you kill him is because he specifically tells you to. He stops you from killing him, and then he redirects it back to, oh, well, I'm going to make you do your original purpose, but it's because I'm telling you to, because you're just a slave. You're doing what other people do. Yeah, because he tells you, stop, back up, run away, turn around. And then he hands you the golf club and says, kill. And then he even, says it afterwards. When he's beating you, he says, kill! It's his entire...
So then he's not in a position to where he doesn't have control.
He had control, but that was the whole point, is that he was trying to prove his lifestyle, his whole entire point, which is that men choose their own destiny, and the fact that regardless of how things played out from then on, he was in charge of what happened to him. He's crazy. He still thinks there's...
that false flag because he dies.
No, but he's crazy because he thinks that he thinks Rapture's in a position where it's still salvageable. Like it's not fallen into disrepair. He still thinks that, oh, once I get rid of you and Frank Fontaine, then I can start getting things back up.
Then why doesn't he?
Because he's insane. He thinks he's so obsessed with delusions of grandeur that he thinks that his power is all that matters. And as long as he has,
if I'm to subscribe to this theory, Connor, that wouldn't force the slave to then turn on me and kill myself. I would then force the slave to turn around and go get Frank. Because I have goals higher than this little Peddleton Frank Fontaine.
Do you think that he thinks that like he just can't be killed, like, and that's why he like orders you to do it? Or
he certainly can, because he did it in the after the first hit, he still tells you to kill.
Those hits are also fucking lame too.
They are, yeah.
That was poor sound design in that.
It was not, no. Yeah, more impactful. The moment itself is more impactful than those kinds of
It's just like a wet thud. Like,
It is,
like,
yeah.
all right, well, I guess.
You're not even doing the...
Should have been a
like
good
a-
crack.
Yeah, like hitting like a watermelon, you know? Like
The
that's a good
fucking, the
sound.
golf club
Yes.
breaks. When a golf club breaks, there's a sound to it, and you don't hear anything.
hmm Yeah.
So, I don't know, man. I disagree. Like, I just think, the structure, the presentation, all of it just like, it's showboating. It's the narrative going, look how impressive we are. But if you actually examine the elements, it's not that impressive. Like, the game thinks it's saying something, but it's not.
It's not super impressive, no. But part of me
Man,
feels
it
like
thought
you're...
it ate with that, bro.
What's that?
It thought it ate with that.
Yeah, literally. Like, it's just like,
I mean,
all right.
It did. We're just like going back to what Phil said earlier. Well, do we think that because we know about it and the twist is kind of taken away from you?
I think it probably would have been more impactful to me personally if I didn't know it was didn't know it was coming.
Certainly, yeah. I think for
Sure,
most people that
Like,
would have
there's
been
no
the
way
case.
for me to know that.
It-
you know?
The internet spoiled this fucking twist for me. I've never been exposed to that twist in a natural way, right? Like,
I
like
was.
playing the game, cool. But like, I still attest that like, sure, even if I would have been like, wow, for like 30 minutes, and then I just would have kept thinking about it and I would have had a water cooler moment of going, wait, but that doesn't matter because like you didn't engage me, the player, at all. And there's been plenty of games who have engaged me, the player, to do things before this and after this.
Like, aside from Metal Gear, what?
And my point, Shadow of the Colossus, Final Fantasy
Shadow of the Colossus
VII.
doesn't do that, though.
Shadow of the
really.
Colossus does do this.
Shadow of the Colossus takes it on the head of, like, what exactly you're doing, but it's kind of obvious it's bad. Back when I watched my brother play it, when we were playing
Yes,
on
it's
PS2,
obvious it's bad, but you, the player, still do it anyway.
Yeah, because you're trying to save your love. There's a
Exactly.
specific character
That
reason.
engages the player to go do it.
Yeah.
That is what this is trying to
inherently
do, but it does it better.
That inherently is more of a motivation than Bioshock gives you.
Oh, it's certainly more of a motivation, but that's the point, is they give this guy a character. They do establish out the gate. He draws on something from his past about how he's built for greatness. It introduces very early that he has a family. It's not.
He doesn't have a family, though.
But he thinks
That's
so.
the whole
That's-
twist.
that's the
that
whole-
was all fake. It wasn't real. It
I'm not
wasn't
saying
his
it's
family.
that's not. He thought it was real at the time, though, and defined him as a person with at least something there. Now, I'm not defending the depth of it. The depth is not there. It only because at the end of the day,
That makes it
in
worse.
function. But because in function, he serves as the silent protagonist who usually would do things without question. Taking that aspect of we do things without question and saying, well, it really was only because we were being told to do it.
That's making a
rather than
mountain out of a
anything else.
molehill.
Not
Like,
really.
Yeah, that's.
There's a character there. You just want more depth to be calling him a character. But he's
This
still
isn't a character.
He is still a
but
character.
it's not real. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't express anything. There's no emotion. It's all put on you, the player. What are you, the player, feeling? And me, the player, am feeling nothing.
Because the
So
game
you are failing.
Because there's a lot of games that you play as somebody that doesn't really have a strong personality or expression, and
Great. That's
it doesn't do anything with the
great. That's poor for those games too.
But that's the thing
that moment where you go into like the dance club and you like follow the kind of like memory of this woman into like the back room. That was supposed to be like your mom, right?
No, those
She's
are
like a
different.
stripper?
Those are different moments of what you have experienced in Rapture before coming through and breaking through your hypnosis. So those are real experiences that your character has actually had. The flashes on screen of like a farmhouse or a family or whatever, those are fake. But the visions you get in game, those are real. Those are real things that your
Okay.
character has seen before.
Because I thought like maybe they were trying to say like Frank Fontaine had sex with a stripper and then like you're his son or something. But then I know he says that I'm not your dad or something like that.
felt like your dad. We don't know where your character came from.
Doesn't matter. Like
If you're talking about the themes of manipulation under capitalism, I mean, today I'll bring in real world stuff right now. There was a Supreme Court ruling a couple of years ago on the Mars Candy Company because they were benefiting from literal slave labor in Africa. And they were basically decided upon, well, you're not culpable for it because it's a part of the supply chain. You aren't actively, facilitating child slavery. You're just
buying the things from the slavers.
yeah,
Okay.
horrible, bad. But it's this unethical nature of human will, human what's the word? Self. Will you make your own choices?
Agency.
Human agency being taken away from you because a larger power that has more power in whatever system you're talking about. In the concept of Bioshock, it's Rapture, which is, every man is their own master, power reigns supreme. It allows you to do unethical things like that. So the fact that he has those elements of, the whole twist involving him being from Rapture and being mentally manipulated, I do think that has its place within the themes of the game, while in addition having its place in the concept of, well, you are doing things as a silent protagonist, where most games you would just do it because, the game is making you do it, but this one takes that and just alters it slightly. It's not as amazing as
But that would only work if the player actually has any amount of choice in what's going on here.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't. It actually fakes choice with the little sisters. That's not a choice. I mean, it is.
It's a morality system.
Yeah, but that's my thing with this game is every single part and every single point it tries to make, I shrug my shoulders and go, so? And granted, I guess you could do that with any game. But or any piece of art, right? But this one I just think is so underdeveloped. I don't think their punches are not landing here, where the other games I've named so far, those punches do land. They are effective. They do make me feel something. And then it's all I think it's all the entire package is reflective upon itself, because the gameplay has that same mindset, the hacking has that same mindset of all right, I'm just gonna go through these motions and kind of do the things or whatever. And ideally that would boost it up, but it again, the game thinks it's grander than it is. So this sense of grandiosity about it, and the praise it gets online, and the praise that the culture has put upon it, I think is totally undeserved. This is going in the bucket as one of the most overrated games of all time for me, if not top 3 maybe. And my you brought up for the time, and how I'm usually that guy. My point is when I bring up for the time, it's because we don't know any better. We knew better by this point. And on top of that, a lot of the not knowing any better is counterbalanced by impact and influence.
Again,
and I would argue, let me just finish this. I would argue if you remove Bioshock from history, not that much changes.
No, I agree. Yeah. I do think you're overstating how much impact Metal Gear should have, in the sense that, Metal Gear did it. And
Metal Gear
so
Solid 1 has that amount of impact for narrative. There is a pre and post Metal Gear Solid 1 narrative.
No, I refuse that. Still to this day. 2, definitively. 1, I think that's
one is more impactful, and again, this is because of the times.
And more impactful.
What is more impactful for its narrative than 2 is.
I think it's more impactful for the game it is in terms of its design, rather than necessarily narrative.
One said, hey, we can be at this level of quality. Two said, hey, we can be this bold. Mm-hmm. There's a difference between those two things.
But in this case, in terms of the boldness of the would you kindly aspect, it has more similarities to 2 as opposed to 1.
It's trying to be 2, but it's not. Mm-hmm. And it's fellatioing itself like it is.
Is it trying to be 2?
It's trying to be 2.
In what way specifically?
In the whole would you kindly twist, it's trying to be the Raiden twist. Of are you really a player in this game? Or do you really have any real agency, this, that, and the third? And now you could argue with me that you don't have any agency in Metal Gear Solid 2 as well, because the game beat for beat plays out like it does. But it's just more effective at making you feel like there's choices, because how you handle each combat encounter is entirely based on you. Do you sneak around them? Do you murder everybody in the room? Do you knock everybody in the room out? Are you going a pacifist run? Are you going a murderer run, or all of this? That's not a choice in Bioshock. The gameplay does not reflect what you're trying to come across in the narrative at all. It's two separate things. They are not married together. And if you want to be effective in this medium, you have to marry them. Because otherwise, why are we in this medium? Bioshock would be better as an audiobook series.
I kind of like that. I like that idea.
It would be better. No, not better necessarily.
No,
depending
it'd
on
be
how
better.
it was structured.
Does anybody have anything else that they want to pull up?
No, I think we nailed it.
All right. Fantastic. Let's head all over to our rankings. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, we rank every game amongst the other games in the series. Remember that you can, in fact, see every review that we've done in the playlist in the description down below. As of right now, I'm going to go ahead and just continue naming them off, because we're not that deep to where I don't feel the need to do that. There are 30 titles on the list as of right now. This will be titled 31, or the 31st game that we've put into the list. Excuse me. Number 30, Fable. Number 29, Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze. Number 28, Prey. Number 27, Tomb Raider. Number 26, Alan Wake. Number 25, Batman Arkham Asylum. Number 24, Uncharted Drake's Fortune. Number 23, Halo Combat Evolved. 22, Dead Cells. 21, Shadow of the Colossus, 20, Mario 64, 19, Resident Evil 4, 18, Portal, 17, Banjo-Kazooie, 16, Ratchet and Clank, 15, Pokemon Soul Silver, 14, Severed, 13, Resident Evil, 12, Chrono Trigger, 11, Dishonored, 10, Metal Gear Solid, 9, Shovel Knight, 8, Portal 2, 7, Doom 2016, 6, Yakuza 0, 5, Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty, 4, Hades, 3, Final Fantasy 7, 2, The Last of Us, and number 1, God of War, Ragnarok. Who wants to start?
Who knows where it's going on the list? Anyone change their minds, still thinking about it?
I've got a range.
I have an exact spot.
You hit us. Give me your exact spot.
Well, it took a lot. It took some thinking. I had 2 games that I was debating which putting it. There was a game I was centering the pick around, the position around, and I'm decided to put it under it. And so my advocation is for Bioshock to be at the new number 18, below Portal, above Resident Evil 4.
Whoa,
That's
dude.
insane. That is insanity.
That's
A large reason
too
due to the fact
high,
is that
Connor.
Resident Evil 4, by the time you're like at near the end in the last act, you want it to be over, and it's more fun moment-to-moment gameplay. Not by a large amount, but more some of these other games.
I strongly
Dead Cells being
disagree.
the greatest argument against that.
I
But
strongly disagree. I think Resident Evil 4 plays way better and way more fun to play than this game. Wow. Phil, where are you at?
I am almost like. Where do you said the new number 19? You said.
Then the new number 19, yeah. Above Resident Evil 4, below Portal.
Am I wrong?
So
Yeah.
I'm at the
Yeah.
new number 29. I'm exactly 10 spots below it.
Low Prey?
Below Prey, above DK Tropical Freeze.
I'm going to take it a step further. I think this should go below Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze. I only really feel this way because Donkey Kong, in my opinion, is rated too low. Donkey Kong should be up around the Batman level. I think that is a more solid game. It achieves what it's trying to do better. I think it like in terms of like intention and execution, Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze does that exactly right. Bioshock, for me, the intention is clear. The execution falls very, very flat for me. And on top of that, Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, sure, yeah, a generic platformer in my opinion, but it's still more fun to play than this. This game is not fun. Like not this. It's not like annoying to play. It's not like bad to play. It's just so like bland and kind of meh that it's not what I'm going to remember. But what I am going to remember is its attempts at this meta narrative of player agency and how badly it fumbles that bag. And then of course how much it thinks so highly of itself. And the fact that you fell so far and think so highly, like you think you're fucking killing it, but you're really not. Like to me, that makes it even worse. So for me, I would like probably objectively, this game is better than Tomb Raider. It's probably objectively better than Alan Wake, but Alan Wake is actually cooking, like with its art and with its means. It just doesn't have the execution on the gameplay side, right? But this game, I don't really think has that execution on the gameplay side either. It does it better, but it doesn't. It's not that much better. Like you said, the it's close between this and 4. This is close to me and Alan Wake. This is like just one step above gameplay, pure. One step above Alan Wake. But narratively, it's so far behind what Alan Wake is doing. And Alan Wake is only as high as it is because of what it is doing artistically for me. So yeah, this would be the new number 30 for me. Below Donkey Kong, above Fable. I think I'd probably still keep it in the C tier though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know what? You actually you made a good case for Donkey Kong. I just wasn't thinking about how much like the vibrant colors of Donkey Kong, the music and how much it slaps.
Those silhouette levels are beautiful.
Yeah, they're very well like designed visually and like mechanically. Yeah, okay. I'm good with it being the new number 30, being above Fable, between Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze and Fable.
Well, anytime someone criticizes this list for that specific purpose, I'll stand back.
You don't have anything to say to any of the points made here.
No, I don't think they're, the range that Bioshock occupies, the best argument would be to put it below Resident Evil 4. And Mario 64, I guess you could argue for its importance, but everything below that, no chance at all.
When you know what's funny is I beat this game like 2-3 weeks. I think it was 3 weeks ago. I beat this game.
I beat it a month ago at this point, or
the longer I've had to stew on it, the further it's fallen in my mind. When I rolled credits, I was like, yeah, probably below Shadow of the Colossus, like somewhere right around there. Maybe Dead Cells would be above it or whatever. But then the more I thought about it, and the more I thought about like the presentation and what it was saying and how it was saying it, I was like, oh no, you really didn't hit the mark in the way you think. Like, and gameplay mechanically, like I really just think you fell flat. A lot of these games get boosted up above Bioshock for me because they're not trying to do what Bioshock is trying to do.
I think you're being way, way too critical and harsh on that, but that's how it lands.
We say that, but you still think Batman is the worst game we've played. And
it's still definitively the worst.
That's ridiculous.
By far.
You're ridiculous.
This sucks ass. You guys are losers.
I beat Bioshock December 15th at 10:28 p.m.
How do you know that? You log it in your phone?
You just look at his trophy.
No,
No.
because
I didn't know that.
I looked at whenever I talked about it on.
Oh, that too. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, that is it. Bioshock is your new number 30, above Fable, below Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze. Phil, do you agree? Maybe should like to stay in the C tier.
That's fine. Yeah, no, I don't think it's bad enough in its gameplay to be worth a C tier or be worth a D tier.
Wait till we get to the D tier game of this month.
Fable really was that bad mechanically, wasn't it? Yeah, I agree with that. So Connor, it's your month. Your time to choose. What are we playing for the month of January?
Well, some people might know due to an agreement that happened, but
So annoying.
it might be Phil
Why is it annoying?
because it's collusion.
So
Tavin, you're only saying that because it's Metal Gear. It's Metal Gear.
right, but you're getting the same thing out of it. My thing is like I kind of like it because it means we get through some franchises a little bit faster.
Mm-hmm. Not because it happens to be before Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta.
No.
Oh, bullshit.
for
Need more
Delta.
Tavin.
No, I can.
You
No,
want
it's not
this
for
to be
Delta.
there before
It's not
then.
for
Why
Delta.
are you
It's
saying
because I want to
Delta?
talk about Snake Eater. I want to put Snake Eater on the list.
I never said it was Snake Eater I'm choosing.
I would rather. What do you choose?
I said Metal Gear, dude. I'm choosing. No. It is the year of the snake.
It is the year of the
Auspiciously,
snake.
Phil, it is the year of the snake. So even if I didn't want to,
Oh.
I have to.
Makes sense for it to be Tavin's year.
I don't know what that means.
Delta, I'm assuming.
Calling me a snake, but I don't know why.
I'm calling him a snake.
Oh, shit. Why?
It's Tavin, you know.
I mean, I agree with that. I just didn't know if there was a specific reason. But yeah, you're a snake.
It's a very serpentine name, you know.
Tavin. It's French.
What are we playing?
I just told you. Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater.
Fantastic.
It is the year of the snake.
Excellent. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is what we were playing through the month of January. Come to us the first Tuesday, the first Monday, if you want to watch us record it live, of February. We will be back with a Game Club review of Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater.
February 3rd.
Damn it.
There it is. Boom, boom, boom. Until next time, have a great time. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Make sure you ring off in the comments below how you feel about Bioshock and why I'm wrong. And
You'll get a lot of that.
Yeah, I will. And until next time, have a great time. Gentlemen, say goodbye to the people.
Goodbye,
See ya.
people.